What if the difference between struggling to get people to buy into your ideas and having them actively chase you down? What if it was just a single, well-crafted letter?
Right. And what if you already possess the most important skill to write it? I mean, even if you completely failed high school English.
Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're really tearing apart the foundational mechanics of persuasive writing. We're looking at sources that prove that crafting the ultimate sales pitch isn't about high-pressure selling at all.
No, it really isn't. Whether you're selling a product or pitching an idea to your boss or trying to raise money for a charity, it's actually about radical empathy.
Exactly. And in this deep dive, you're going to learn how to deeply understand your audience, uncover the hidden psychological benefits of whatever you are offering, and use brutal honesty to build unbreakable credibility.
It is a profound shift in perspective. We are so conditioned to think of persuasion as this dark art or some genetic gift of charisma that you're just born with.
Totally. The sleazy car salesman stereotype.
Right. But when you look at the actual mechanics of truly effective communication, it isn't magic. It is a highly mechanical, deeply empathetic process that anyone can learn.
And this shift matters so much for anyone in business or entrepreneurship because it moves the focus entirely away from traditional aggressive tactics.
It forces you to stop thinking about what you want to achieve and start obsessing over the internal reality of the person you're actually communicating with.
So, okay, let's set the stage here.
Mhm.
Because before you write a single word, there is this massive looming obstacle that stops almost everyone cold,
The blank page.
the blank page.
Yeah.
It is terrifying. You sit down, you stare at that blinking cursor, and the immediate assumption is that you need a Harvard degree in literature or something.
Yeah. Or the creative genius of a best-selling novelist just to make it work.
Exactly. You think you need to invent brilliance completely out of thin air.
And that assumption is honestly the biggest hurdle in any form of copywriting or persuasive communication.
The source material we're analyzing today addresses this immediately, right?
It does, and very forcefully. There is no magic required. The act of writing copy that sells is not a creative act in the way we traditionally think of art or poetry.
Well, what is it then?
It is fundamentally an assembly process. You are adhering to proven formulas and putting together essential component parts within a reliable framework.
Okay, let's unpack this because that reframing takes so much pressure off. Writing a persuasive letter is really just a sales presentation in print, right?
That's a perfect way to look at it.
If you can imagine sitting on the living room floor trying to sell a vacuum cleaner to a family with the kids screaming in the background.
And the dog running around knocking things over.
Yes, that is the exact same energy and conversational approach you need. You're just capturing that chaotic, real-world living room conversation and putting it onto paper.
And because it is an assembly process, you don't have to invent the underlying structure from scratch. Our sources introduce a critical tool for this, which is the concept of a swipe file.
Wait, a swipe file? That sounds a lot like a polite word for plagiarism.
I know, it sounds a bit shady at first.
Where is the line between stealing someone's letter and just using it as inspiration?
It's a very important distinction to make. A swipe file isn't about intellectual property theft, it's about structural adaptation.
Okay, structural adaptation.
Right. It's a physical or digital collection of successful ads, direct mail pieces, and sales letters that you actively gather over time.
So you aren't collecting them to steal their product claims or copy their specific phrasing word for word.
Definitely not. You are collecting them to analyze their architecture. You look at how they transition from a headline to a story, or how they introduce a guarantee, or how they handle objections.
So it's like having a box of Lego bricks that are already proven to fit together perfectly.
Yes, exactly.
Like you see a house someone else built and you think, wow, I really like how they built that roof. You don't steal their house. You just use the same interlocking technique to build the roof on your own. Completely different building.
Precisely. You are analyzing the rhythm and the flow. If you receive a letter in the mail, or an email that genuinely makes you want to pull out your credit card, your first instinct shouldn't just be to buy the thing.
What should it be?
Your instinct should be to save that piece of writing, put it in your swipe file, deconstruct it.
Like reverse engineering it.
Exactly. Ask yourself, what psychological lever did they just pull to make me feel this way? You really don't need to be a creative genius to be highly observant.
And if anyone listening is doubting whether this mechanical, non-creative approach actually works for normal people, we really have to talk about Darren Garman.
Oh, the Darren Garman story is incredible. It is the ultimate proof of concept in the source material.
It really is. Because he was not a copywriter.
No, not at all. He had no background in marketing, no elite education in behavioral psychology. He was a prison guard in
A
Iowa.
prison guard in the American heartland. I mean, you cannot get further from Madison Avenue advertising agencies than that.
You really can't. And one day, he essentially stumbles upon a copy of Napoleon Hill's classic mindset book, Think and Grow Rich.
Right outside the warden's office, right?
Yeah. He reads it, and it shifts his entire perspective on what is possible for his life, and he decides he wants to get into commercial real estate investment.
Now think about the immense barrier to entry there. How does a prison guard with zero connections, no capital, and no track record convince wealthy individuals to trust him with hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy apartment buildings?
It's wild to even think about. He certainly couldn't just walk into a country club and start networking.
No, he didn't have the pedigree for it. So he did it by writing his own long-form sales letters.
And from what I understand, they weren't slick or polished at all, were they?
Not at all. They were incredibly authentic. He just sat down in his office in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and wrote letters telling his personal rags-to-riches story.
He didn't hire a fancy ad agency to make him sound corporate.
Nope. He used his reality as an asset. And he used those raw, honest letters to sell apartment building investments, often sight unseen to investors all over the world.
Wait, sight unseen?
Yeah, California, New Jersey, even Japan. He built a multi-million-dollar investment business entirely through print.
That is just mind-blowing. He gathered the right raw materials, the right clay, as the source calls it, and he assembled it using the exact structural formulas we are breaking down today.
Which means the real question is, how do we get that clay? Before you can use the scissors and tape to adapt things from your swipe file, you need the substance.
Right. You need the deep insights that make the letter actually resonate with the reader.
Getting that clay requires a fundamental shift in where your attention is focused, doesn't it?
It does. The core concept here is that persuasion does not start with your product.
Okay.
It does not start with your features or your pricing or your company history. It starts by completely abandoning your own perspective and walking a mile in the prospect's shoes.
So profound empathy.
Yes, profound, almost uncomfortable understanding of the other person.
But isn't that just standard business advice? Like, everyone says know your customer. Every startup pitch deck has a slide with a customer persona on it.
They say it, yeah, but they rarely actually do the rigorous work required to achieve it.
That's fair.
Instead of true empathy, they rely on lazy assumptions. They create these sanitized, idealized versions of their customers that don't exist in the real world.
Oh, that reminds me of the home mortgage infomercial anecdote from the source material.
Yeah.
It is hilarious, but so painful.
Yes. It perfectly illustrates this danger. Set that up for us.
Okay, so a writer scripts an infomercial for a financial product, and in the script, the stage directions say the spokesperson should walk into a, quote, typical American home.
And how does the production company, sitting in their studio bubble, interpret a typical American home?
They literally build a set that features a pristine room with pure white, flawless carpet and a massive, gleaming grand piano as the centerpiece of the living room.
A grand piano, which is the absolute definition of being dangerously out of touch.
Right. Marketers and business owners sit in their comfortable offices and imagine their customers, but they project their own ideals.
You cannot write a persuasive, empathetic letter to someone who lives in a white-carpeted grand piano world if your actual customer is a dual-income family trying to pay off crushing credit card debt.
Yeah, while stepping over plastic kids' toys and dog hair.
Exactly. If your messaging is aimed at the grand piano, the person tripping over the Lego bricks won't hear you at all.
So how do we avoid the white carpet trap? If we can't rely on our assumptions, how do we actually gather the real gritty data to get into the customer's reality?
Because you can't just call them up and ask them to bare their soul, right?
Exactly. People don't want to do that.
You avoid the trap by systematically asking 10 specific diagnostic questions.
The 10 smart market diagnosis questions.
Right. And these aren't your standard demographic survey questions like age, zip code, and household income.
Because those tell you who they are, but they don't tell you why they act.
Precisely. These 10 questions are deep psychological probes designed to map the internal emotional landscape of your target audience.
I really want us to take our time and unpack every single one of these. When I read through this list in the source, I realized how rare it is to actually interrogate an audience this intensely.
It is rare, which is why it's such a competitive advantage. Let's start with the first one.
Okay, question 1. What keeps them awake at night? Indigestion, boiling up their esophagus, eyes open, staring at the ceiling.
Notice the visceral physical language in that question.
Yeah, indigestion boiling up.
It's not just asking what are their general problems or pain points, it's asking about the acute physical manifestation of stress.
When you force yourself to visualize your reader at 2:20 a.m., sweating, staring at the ceiling, you are connecting with their most immediate, pressing anxiety.
The mechanism of persuasion here is simple. If you can articulate their 2:00 a.m. anxiety in your letter better and more vividly than they can articulate it themselves, they will automatically assume you have the solution.
Wow. That is a fascinating psychological trigger.
It really works.
When someone perfectly describes my exact nuanced stress, not just the broad category of my stress, but the specific way it feels, I immediately drop my guard and trust them.
Because they get it.
Right. But how do you actually find that out? I mean, if I'm selling B2B software to HR managers, I don't know what they are thinking at 2 a.m.
You find it by observing them anonymously in their native habitats?
Their native habitats?
Yeah. You don't send them a corporate survey because people lie on surveys. They put on their professional mask.
That is so true.
Instead, you go to where they vent. You go to industry-specific Reddit forums or private LinkedIn groups, or you read the 1-star and 5-star reviews of your competitor's product.
Oh, that's smart. Looking at competitor reviews.
You look for the emotional language they use when they think no one is trying to sell them anything. You look for phrases like, I'm so exhausted by, or I am terrified that.
Which flows right into the next diagnostic probe. Because anxiety isn't just about the immediate stress keeping them awake. It's also about what's lurking in the shadows.
Right, which brings us to the second question. What are they afraid of?
Fear is such a primal driver.
It is. And in human behavioral psychology, the fear of loss is almost always a stronger motivator than the desire for gain.
But you have to identify the specific fear, right?
Absolutely. If you are selling financial planning services, are they afraid of a market crash? Or are they actually afraid of becoming a burden to their children in old age?
Those are two very different letters to write.
Completely different. Or if you are selling enterprise software, the buyer might not be afraid of inefficiency. They might be terrified of looking foolish in front of their CEO for making a bad vendor choice.
Oh man, the fear of looking incompetent. So if your letter just talks about increasing efficiency by 20%, but fails to address their secret fear of looking foolish, it will feel completely hollow to them.
Exactly. Your message will bounce right off their defensive shield because you aren't speaking to the emotion actually driving the car.
All right, the third question shifts from fear to aggression. What are they angry about? And crucially, who are they angry at?
This is where we tap into tribalism and the power of shared enemies.
Shared enemies, I like that.
Anger is an incredibly mobilizing emotion. It forces action. If you can accurately identify what frustrates your customer, you can position yourself in solidarity with them.
Let's use an example. Say you are a mechanic writing a letter to local car owners. What are they angry about?
They are probably angry at being overcharged. They are angry at confusing jargon used to trick them. They are angry at feeling helpless when a check engine light comes on.
So instead of just saying, we fix cars, you say something like, aren't you sick and tired of mechanics who talk down to you and invent phantom repairs just to pad the bill?
Yes. You are telling them, I see the injustice you are facing, I understand your righteous anger, and I am standing on your side of the table against that injustice.
It is the ultimate rapport builder.
It really is. You become an ally, not a vendor.
Okay, those first three are huge existential emotions.
Yeah.
Fear, anger, 2.00 a.m. panic. But the fourth question brings it down to the micro level.
Right. What are their top 3 daily frustrations?
Because existential fears are powerful, but daily friction is what grinds people down, right?
Exactly. You need to map out a typical Tuesday in their life. What specifically annoys them at 9:00 a.m., then at 2:00 p.m., and again at 5:00.
Is it the legacy software crashing every time they try to export a report?
Or is it the hour-long commute in bumper-to-bumper traffic?
Or the constant barrage of Slack notifications breaking their concentration?
A sales letter that can vividly describe and then promise to remove a highly specific micro-daily friction point feels incredibly persuasive.
Because it proves you actually live in their world. It proves you aren't writing from a grand piano living room.
And it builds incredible trust. If you understand the small annoyances, they trust you to handle the big solutions.
Okay, the fifth question pulls all the way back out to the macro view. What trends are occurring and will occur in their businesses or lives?
Because no one exists in a vacuum. You need to understand the shifting tectonic plates beneath their feet.
For example,
Well, if you are selling to real estate agents, what is the current trend? Are interest rates skyrocketing? Is inventory drying up? Are they facing new regulatory crackdowns on commission structures?
Or if you are targeting a demographic like baby boomers, what life transitions are they currently navigating?
Exactly. If you can speak intelligently to the macro environment they are stressed about, you elevate yourself from a simple salesperson to a visionary.
You become a trusted guide who sees the whole chessboard.
You are providing context for their pain, which is incredibly comforting to the reader.
Now, this next one, question 6, might be the most powerful of all, and we'll dive deeper into how this impacts the offer later. But it asks, what do they secretly, ardently desire most?
The operative word there is secretly,
Why secretly?
because this is the desire they would never, ever put on a formal survey. It is the desire they might even be too embarrassed to admit to their own spouse.
Give me an example of a secret desire versus a stated desire.
Let's say you are selling a high-end intensive fitness program for middle-aged executives.
Okay.
If you ask them what they want, their stated desire will be, I want to improve my cardiovascular health and reduce my cholesterol.
That's the logical, socially acceptable answer.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to sound vain.
Right. But their secret, ardent desire. They want to walk into their college reunion and have their old classmates drop their jaws.
Oh, yeah.
They want to feel physically dominant in the boardroom. They want to recapture the neutrality they had at 25.
So the secret desire is almost always tied to ego, status, pride, or just a desire for effortless superiority.
Exactly.
But how do you use that in a letter without sounding manipulative? I mean, you can't just write, buy this to feed your massive ego.
No, you definitely don't state it that crassly. The stated logical benefit is the text. The secret desire is the subtext.
The subtext. I like that.
You talk about health and vitality, but you use imagery and phrasing that subtly implies restored youth, dominance, and turning heads. You give them the logical reason to buy, but you satisfy the emotional secret desire.
That is brilliant. Okay, question 7 is about cognitive wiring. Is there a built-in bias to the way they make decisions?
This is absolutely vital for the tone and structure of your writing. Different professions and personality types process information in fundamentally different ways.
The source uses the classic example of engineers, right?
Yes. Engineers are trained to be exceptionally analytical, skeptical of fluff, and driven by hard data intolerances.
So if you write a hype-filled, emotionally breathless sales letter to an engineer with lots of exclamation points and no schematics,
It will instantly hit the trash. They'll see it as intellectually insulting.
conversely, if you are writing to highly creative people, maybe graphic designers or musicians, and your letter is nothing but dry spreadsheets, ROI calculations, and dense technical specs.
You will bore them to tears. You must align your argument with the natural cognitive biases of the reader. How do they prefer to consume information?
Which ties perfectly into question 8. Do they have their own language?
Every profession, every hobby, every subculture has tribal language. Acronyms, slang, shorthand, inside jokes.
And this language serves as a shibboleth. It instantly signals who is an insider and who is an outsider.
Precisely. If you use their specific terminology fluently and correctly, you bypass their initial skepticism because you sound like one of the tribe.
But if you misuse it, or if you use generic corporate speak, you are instantly exposed as a tourist trying to make a quick buck.
The source gives some great advice on this, suggesting you go to the library and read their specific trade journals.
Or even sit in the lobby bars of hotels during their industry conventions just to eavesdrop.
Literally. It's anthropological research. You want your letter to sound like it was written by a peer, not a vendor.
Right. The final 2 diagnostic questions go hand in hand, and they deal with the customer's historical baggage.
Yes, questions 9 and 10.
Question 9. Who else is selling something similar to them, and how? And question 10. Who else has tried selling them something similar, and how has that effort failed?
We have to remember that your letter does not arrive in a vacuum. It arrives in the hands of a person who has likely been bombarded with similar pitches for years.
They have a history.
Exactly. Maybe they bought a competitor's software 3 years ago, the implementation was a nightmare, and they lost thousands of dollars.
So they are coming to your letter with a massive defensive shield built out of past trauma.
If you don't know the landscape of broken promises they've already navigated, you might inadvertently use the exact same trigger words that the scammy competitor used.
So you have to know what they've heard before. and what has failed them before, so you can clearly articulate why your approach is structurally different.
You have to explicitly say, I know you've probably tried X, and I know it failed because of Y. That's why we built this entirely differently.
You are validating their skepticism and proving you understand their history.
Ex
So taking a step back, going through all 10 of those questions, it's a massive amount of investigative work. It's not just sitting down and typing.
No, it's rigorous.
But you can see how the raw material, the clay you gather from that exercise, is incredibly rich. And our source gives an amazing real-world application of what happens when a writer actually applies this kind of deep empathy.
The Arthritis Foundation telethon example.
Yes, let's talk about that.
This is a classic masterclass case study in shifting the focus from the sender's priorities to the receiver's priorities.
Right. So the writer in this case study was brought in to create a corporate fundraising letter for a charity telethon.
And the first thing he did was look at what all the other charities were doing.
They were all writing letters focused entirely on the charity's internal needs. The letters basically said, we need this money to do this vital research. Our clinics need funding. Help us help these patients.
Which objectively is a noble and true cause.
It is entirely true.
Yeah.
But the writer realized that doesn't actually answer the 10 questions for the reader.
When he put himself in the shoes of the targeted corporate executives, the specific individuals opening the mail, he asked a different question.
If I were a business owner getting banged at by 10 different worthy charities every week, what would actually motivate me to write a check?
And this is where we have to confront the reality of human nature, which isn't always pretty.
The writer realized that the executive, first and foremost, is stressed about their own business. They have quotas, they have budgets, they have PR issues.
So the resulting letter didn't lead with a bleeding heart plea for the charity's needs.
Instead, the letter offered 5 distinct, self-interested benefits to the corporate donor.
Let's break those down because they are brilliant.
Number 1, helping a worthy cause. Sure, that's in there. You get the warm glow.
Naturally.
Number 2, gaining highly valuable TV exposure and positive public relations for their company during the telethon.
Number 3, no money out of the current corporate budget because the charity provided a system for the company's employees to raise the funds internally.
Oh, that's clever. Number 4, exclusive positioning against their local competitors.
And number 5, complete staff assistance from the charity to run the campaign so it wouldn't create extra work for the executive.
Now, I know what you might be thinking when you hear that list. Let me be the skeptic here for a second.
Go for it.
When I hear that, it feels deeply cynical. Shouldn't charity be about altruism? Shouldn't people give just because it's the morally right thing to do? By focusing on the executive's PR and budget, aren't we just manipulating their greed?
It is a very fair, natural reaction. But if we connect this to the broader philosophy of elite persuasion, we have to understand that persuasion requires us to deal with reality as it is, not as we wish it to be.
Reality as it is.
Human beings are incredibly complex. We absolutely want to do good in the world, yes, but we are also inherently biologically self-interested. A corporate executive has a fiduciary duty to their company's bottom line. They have limited time and limited resources.
So if you just ask them for money, you're asking them to harm their own metrics for your benefit.
Precisely. By aligning the charitable request with the audience's ego, their public relations needs, and their strict budgetary constraints, you aren't being cynical. You are practicing radical empathy.
Radical empathy.
You are saying, I understand the immense pressures you are under as an executive. I know you can't just write blank checks. So I have designed a mechanism for you to be a public hero, to do real good for the world without hurting your business or your employees.
I have designed a mechanism for you to be a hero. That is such a powerful reframing. You totally remove the friction of the donation.
It's a win-win.
And this concept of aligning with the reader's current reality leads perfectly into an advanced strategy the source introduces called the Robert Collier principle.
Yes. Robert Collier was a spectacularly successful copywriter back in the 1930s. He sold everything from trench coats to magazine subscriptions purely by direct mail.
And his golden rule, the foundation of his success, was this: always enter the conversation already occurring in the customer's mind.
I love the analogy the source uses to explain this. It compares it to how the political commentator Keith Olbermann used to open his television show.
Oh, right. He would look into the camera and ask, what will you be talking about tomorrow?
It's a brilliant filtering mechanism. Think about your customer right now. When they are sitting at their kitchen table tonight drinking a glass of wine or standing around the water cooler tomorrow morning at the office, What are they already talking about?
What current event or industry gossip or macroeconomic stress is currently dominating their internal monologue?
Collier's point was that if you interrupt a prospect with a pitch for a winter coat while they are deep in thought about how they're going to pay their property taxes, you are an annoying pest. You are an interruption.
But if you align your message with what they are already focused on, you become a welcome guest.
Think about how you scroll through social media today. If your feed is full of news about an impending recession and an ad pops up saying, "Buy my new coaching program," you ignore it.
Yeah.
But if the ad says, "How to recession-proof your consulting business before Q3, you stop scrolling.
They didn't force you to change your train of thought. They joined your existing train of thought, matched your pace, and then gently steered the conversation toward their solution.
So the deeply practical takeaway here for anyone listening is this. When you sit down to write, do not start by talking about yourself. Do not start with, "We are proud to announce."
Start by writing down exactly what conversation your target audience is having right now. Open your letter by joining that conversation.
Which brings us to the next massive shift in perspective. So you've done the work. You know exactly what the customer wants. You know their fears, their language, and the conversation they are having.
Okay, what's next?
Now, you have to look at what you are actually offering them. And as the source points out, chances are you are looking at your own product entirely wrong.
Oh, this is a mantra that every single person in business should have tattooed on the inside of their eyelids. People do not buy things for what they are. They buy things for what they do.
This is the foundational distinction between a feature and a benefit. And it is shocking how many smart companies still get this wrong.
Let's break that down.
A feature is a mechanical, objective fact about a product or service.
Yeah.
A benefit is the positive, subjective outcome that feature provides for the user.
Look, we all know Marketing 101. Nobody buys a mattress because they are obsessed with the 1,000 individually wrapped titanium microcoils.
Right. The titanium coil is the feature.
The benefit is waking up at 7 a.m. without feeling like a rusty knife is jammed in your lower back. The coil is just the delivery mechanism for the pain-free morning.
That much is obvious. But the source material takes this basic concept and elevates it to the graduate level by introducing a concept from Ted Nicholas.
Yes. Ted Nicholas is a legend in direct response advertising. And just for context, when we say direct response advertising, we mean ads or letters that are designed to make the reader take immediate, trackable action, usually pulling out their wallet and buying right then and there with no middleman.
It is the most brutal testing ground for persuasion. Nicholas sold over $200 million worth of how-to books this way, and he popularized the concept of the hidden benefit.
The hidden benefit, here's where the psychology gets really interesting. What makes a benefit hidden?
A standard benefit is the logical outcome. The mattress gives you a pain-free back. But the hidden benefit is one layer deeper.
Okay.
It is a benefit that is not immediately obvious and often not explicitly stated by the customer. It is a benefit of profound emotional importance. It taps directly into those secret, ardent desires we talked about during the 10 diagnostic questions.
Our source gives a real-world example of this that completely changed how I view marketing. The Pamela Yellen golf example. Let's spend some time dissecting this because it perfectly illustrates how elusive the hidden benefit can be until you truly observe your customer in the wild.
It's a brilliant case study in observational empathy. Set the stage for us.
So Pamela Yellen is conducting a multi-day, high-priced, highly intensive seminar. She is teaching new advanced methods for recruiting financial agents. The audience consists of high-level corporate executives and general agents from major life insurance companies. These people paid a massive premium to be there. They traveled across the country.
And the subject matter recruiting top talent is of absolute critical importance to the survival of their agencies.
Right. So logically, if you were writing a sales letter to get people to attend this seminar, the primary benefit is glaringly obvious. Attend this seminar, learn how to recruit better agents, which will ultimately increase your agency's revenue and market share.
That is the standard logical benefit.
And it's a strong benefit. But Pamela and the author noticed something fascinating happening during the seminar breaks. When these high-powered executives were out in the hallway mingling, getting coffee, what were they actually talking about?
You'd think they'd be debating the recruitment strategies they just learned.
Right. But they weren't. No. They were obsessing over golf. They were talking about where they were playing that evening, what course they were going to try and squeeze in before the seminar started the next morning, what their handicap was.
because they were wealthy executives, they had reached a certain level of success, and their actual passion, their primary daily motivation was being out on the links.
Recruiting was just the painful chore they had to do to maintain their lifestyle.
Exactly. So observing this completely changed the marketing strategy.
Instead of just selling a complex system to recruit agents more effectively, they pivoted to the hidden benefit.
The new messaging essentially became, use this advanced system to get all your required recruiting done in just a few hours a month, so you have more time to get out on the golf course.
Oh man, think about the psychological shift there. The product didn't change at all. The features of the seminar were identical. The primary logical benefit, better recruiting, was still there.
But by identifying the hidden emotional benefit, reclaiming their time for a beloved hobby, elevating their personal lifestyle, they tapped into the prospect's truest, most ardent desire.
It's like finding the hidden lever behind the bookshelf that actually opens the secret door. The logical benefit justifies the purchase to their boss or their accountant, but the hidden benefit is what makes them desperately want it in their gut.
It requires you to be brutally honest about human motivation. We like to tell ourselves that we make decisions based on logic, data, and ROI. But the truth of behavioral economics is that we buy based on emotion, and we use logic to justify the purchase after the fact.
The hidden benefit provides the emotional fuel for the transaction.
Yes, exactly.
So practically speaking, how does someone listening apply this? The source suggests a three-step exercise.
Right, step one.
First, you make a physical list of all your product's features, every technical detail, every spec.
Second, you translate every single one of those features into a tangible, logical benefit.
But then third, you look at that list of logical benefits, and you force yourself to dig one layer deeper into human psychology.
Yeah.
You ask, what is the hidden benefit behind the logical benefit?
Does this save them time so they can be with their kids? Does this make them look like a genius to their CEO? Does it feed their ego?
That hidden benefit is what belongs in your headline.
It's the difference between selling a drill, which is the feature, selling a hole in the wall, which is the benefit, and selling the pride of a beautifully decorated home that impresses the neighbors, the hidden benefit.
Okay, so let's say you've done all this profound work. You know your customers' deepest fears and their 2.0 AM anxieties. You've uncovered the hidden benefit of your offer that speaks directly to their soul. You write this beautiful, empathetic, emotionally resonant letter that enters the conversation in their mind.
And they read it, they nod along, and they still don't buy.
Exactly. Because even with the perfect hidden benefit, people are naturally fiercely skeptical. They read this amazing promise, they feel the emotional pull, and then their brain immediately slams on the brakes and starts looking for the catch.
Which brings us to the third and final foundational concept of this deep dive, the technique to disarm that skepticism.
Right.
It involves creating a damaging admission and addressing your own flaws openly.
Now, let me be real for a second, because this is the most counterintuitive part of the whole source material. If I am writing a proposal, trying to get a client to pay me a $10,000 monthly retainer for consulting, and I intentionally start listing all the reasons I'm terrible or all the flaws in my service, aren't I just talking them out of the sale?
I mean, it sounds crazy.
Isn't there a massive risk of being too honest and scaring them away?
That is the conventional, old-school sales wisdom. Never show weakness, always project perfection. But to understand why that conventional wisdom is wrong, we have to look at the modern psychology of skepticism.
Okay, let's look at it.
When faced with a seemingly perfect offer, the human brain automatically goes into defense mode. We are bombarded by thousands of marketing messages every single day, all claiming to be the absolute best, the fastest, the cheapest, the most revolutionary.
It's just a wall of noise.
It is. And our survival mechanism in this modern, hyper-marketed world is to assume everything is a scam or an exaggeration until definitively proven otherwise. When a reader sees a perfect promise, they actively search for reasons not to believe you.
The source quotes the legendary baseball player Yogi Berra, who famously said, "When people don't want to come to the ballpark, there ain't nothing that can keep them from not coming."
It's so true. When a reader is determined to find a flaw in your offer because they want an excuse to say no and protect their wallet, they will find one. Or worse, they will just invent one in their head based on their own biases.
Exactly. So how do you fight that level of inherent, deeply ingrained resistance?
You fight it by doing the work for them, you anticipate their resistance, and you steer it.
The source advises taking a stack of index cards and writing down every possible objection, every doubt, every fear, every excuse a person might use to justify not responding to your letter.
You list them all. The price is too high. The implementation takes too much time. It won't work for my specific niche situation. Your company is too small to handle our volume. Your company is too big to give us personal attention.
And then you systematically address them in the copy. But the masterstroke, the damaging admission, is taking it a step further than just answering objections.
It is voluntarily, proactively exposing your own drawbacks before they even think of them.
It's basically looking the reader in the eye through the text and saying, you are right to be skeptical, and frankly, here are the 3 reasons why my product might actually be terrible for you.
Which feels terrifying to write.
It really is.
But when you openly admit a flaw, a disadvantage, or an unattractive point about your offer, your credibility stock skyrockets instantly, because nobody does that.
Salesmen are trained to hide flaws behind slick jargon.
Exactly. When you shine a bright, unblinking spotlight on your own shortcomings, the reader's defense mechanisms drop. The internal monologue shifts from, what are they hiding, to, well, if they're willing to tell me the bad stuff so honestly, they must be telling the truth about the good stuff.
The source gives this incredible real-world application of a small local Italian restaurant using this exact strategy to completely dominate their market.
It is a textbook example of turning a glaring competitive disadvantage into a unique selling proposition.
So this small Italian restaurant wants to write a direct mail letter to area residents to get them to come in for dinner. Now, they could have tried to write a standard flowery restaurant ad about authentic Tuscan flavors and exquisite ambience.
Which is what every other restaurant does, and it becomes totally invisible.
Right. But instead of trying to sound like a 5-star Michelin restaurant, they lean completely, unapologetically into what they aren't.
Okay, tell us what they said.
The letter explicitly states, and I'm paraphrasing the tone here, if you are looking for waiters in crisp tuxedos with white linen cloths draped over their arms, if you want an elegant, quiet, romantic atmosphere where you can whisper, do not come here. We don't have any of those things. Frankly, we don't even have a parking lot. Finding a spot is a nightmare.
Let's pause and think about the psychological release that provides the reader. The restaurant has preemptively agreed with the snobbiest, most cynical critic. They have taken every negative Yelp review you could possibly write and just owned it.
Right. You're right. Our parking is a disaster, and it's incredibly loud inside. They take the ammunition right out of the critic's gun, but then comes the pivot, which is where the magic happens.
The pivot is crucial. The damaging admission only works if it sets up a corresponding strength.
The letter continues, but if you want a loud, boisterous, fun atmosphere with massive overflowing portions of incredible authentic food just like your grandmother made, then we are exactly the place for you.
It is so incredibly disarming. By taking their competitive disadvantages, no parking, noisy dining room, no fancy waiters, and turning them into a fun, brutally honest narrative, they polarize the audience in the best way possible.
They aren't apologizing for who they are. They're saying, this is exactly who we are, flaws and all. If you want quiet, go somewhere else. But if you want this specific, chaotic, delicious experience, you are our people.
And in doing so, they build unbreakable trust with their target audience. The people who want massive portions don't care about the parking lot, but they do care that the owner was honest with them.
The practical application of this across any industry is profound. It means you need to honestly assess the disadvantages of your offer. Every single product, every service, every business has unattractive points. Nothing is perfect for everyone.
You need to face those flaws openly, write them down, and then write damaging admission copy that turns your specific flaws into the very reason someone should trust you.
We are significantly more expensive than our competitors because we refuse to outsource our customer service overseas.
Our software takes 3 weeks longer to learn than the cheap alternatives because it's actually robust enough to run an entire enterprise without crashing.
I'm not a slick 50-person corporate agency. I'm a one-person consulting shop, which means if you hire me, you don't get fancy boardroom presentations. But it also means you get my personal cell phone number and you never get handed off to a junior account manager.
Yes. Suddenly, the flaw is the feature. The weakness is the exact proof of the hidden benefit.
So what does this all mean when we bring it together? Let's synthesize the massive ideas we've explored today.
If we look at the entire journey, starting with gathering the clay by getting deep into the customer's mind through the 10 diagnostic questions.
Then getting into the hidden, emotional benefits of the offer.
And finally, using the damaging admission to disarm skepticism, there is a very clear unifying thread.
The soul of this material, the central insight that changes everything, is that elite persuasion is not what society tells us it is. It's not about clever wordplay or finding the perfect adjective.
It is not about high-pressure boiler room tactics. It is not about tricking someone into parting with their money against their will.
Elite persuasion is an act of radical empathy and brutal honesty.
Radical empathy and brutal honesty.
To be truly persuasive, you have to be willing to do the hard work of crawling inside the mind of your customer. You have to sit with their 2.0 a.m. fears, their daily frustrations, and their secret, ardent desires without judgment.
You have to be willing to look at your own product and realize that the mechanical features you are so proud of don't matter nearly as much as the hidden emotional benefit your customer is desperate for.
Even if that benefit is just having more time to play golf.
Exactly. And finally, you have to be courageous enough to admit your own flaws out loud.
When you combine those three elements, empathy for their pain, understanding of their true desires, and honesty about your limitations, you undergo a fundamental transformation in the eyes of the market.
You stop selling and you start offering genuine, deeply resonant solutions. You move from being an annoying pest interrupting their day to a welcome guest joining the conversation already happening in their mind.
You become the one person or the one company who finally truly understands them. And the ultimate secret of human psychology is that when someone feels truly understood, they don't need to be aggressively sold to. The resistance melts away. They just want to know where to sign.
It is a profound, incredibly effective methodology that respects the intelligence and humanity of the reader.
It really is. It changes how you write every email, every pitch, every landing page. But as powerful as this clay is, and as perfect and empathetic as your message might become, there is one final, brutal hurdle.
Because none of this empathy means a single thing if your letter goes straight into the trash or the spam folder unread.
That is the harsh reality of the mail stack. You can write the greatest letter in the world, but if it looks like junk mail, it will be treated like junk mail.
Exactly. So next time, on our next deep dive, we are going to explore how to get your perfectly crafted, empathetic letter past the ultimate gatekeepers.
We'll look at how to force a skeptical reader who is actively sorting their mail over a wastebasket to stop what they are doing and give you their undivided attention.
Surviving the wastebasket sort requires a whole new set of physical and psychological strategies, which are just as counterintuitive as the ones we discussed today.
I cannot wait to unpack those, but before we go today, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over. Think about your own life, your own career, or your own business right now. If you had to write a damaging admission about yourself or your product today, what would it be?
What is the flaw you're most terrified of people finding out?
And more importantly, how could you flip the narrative so that exact flaw actually becomes your greatest, most authentic selling point? Think about it. We'll see you next time. What if I told you that the secret to writing a brilliant, like $1 million sales pitch has absolutely nothing to do with being some creative genius staring at a blank piece of paper?
Man, it really just shatters that whole romanticized image we have, doesn't it?
It does.
Like, we always picture this brilliant writer, maybe some modern-day Don Draper type, right? Just sitting in a dimly lit room, waiting for inspiration to strike, just conjuring up this persuasive magic out of thin air.
Right, just waiting for the muse.
Exactly. But the reality of creating a message that actually moves human beings to get them to pull out their wallets or change a deeply ingrained habit, it's a remarkably different process. I mean, it's almost entirely unglamorous.
Yeah, unglamorous is the perfect word, because if you just rush to the keyboard and, try to force that inspiration, your marketing is going to crumble every single time.
Oh, without a doubt.
So today, you and I are doing a deep dive into this amazing chapter called The Clay with Which to Mold. It's from Dan S. Kennedy's book, The Ultimate Sales Letter. And over the course of this deep dive, we are looking exclusively at the pre-writing phase.
The absolute most important part.
Yes. We're exploring what it really takes to intimately understand the person you're selling to, how to unearth the hidden realities of your own offer, and why completely counter to human nature, by the way, you should actively highlight your product's worst flaws.
Yeah, that last one always gets people. But that clay metaphor in the title, it is the perfect anchor for this entire discussion.
Right.
Because if you think about a master sculptor, right? Before they ever touch a chisel, before they even conceptualize the final statue in their head, they have to go out and source the right material.
You can't mold a masterpiece out of dry dirt.
Exactly. You cannot mold dry dirt. If you skip this gathering phase in business, it does not matter how robust your vocabulary is, or, how beautifully designed your website is, or how witty your slogans are.
None of it matters.
No, you're working with dry dirt. And the second it meets any resistance in the real world, it just turns to dust.
So true. Because writing a pitch isn't really a creative act, is it? It's more of an assembly process.
Hmm.
You're gathering component parts and you're just putting them together.
Yep, it's purely mechanical in that sense.
But to get those parts, you have to start with the single most important variable, which is the customer.
Right. And that brings us to step one, which is what we can basically call radical empathy.
Radical empathy.
Yeah. The foundational error that almost everyone makes when they try to persuade someone is that they operate entirely from their own agenda.
Like, what do I want to say?
Exactly. They sit down at their desk and think, well, what do I want to say about my awesome product today? But the harsh reality is your prospect does not care about you. They do not care about your product. I mean, they care entirely about themselves. So true persuasion requires you to fully inhabit their daily life, their latent fears, their anxieties, their deep-seated desires. If you are out of touch with their literal Tuesday morning reality, you will fail.
Okay, so mechanically, how do we actually do that? Because I'm thinking my immediate instinct as a business owner would be to just pull up my demographic data.
Right, the spreadsheet approach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I look at my dashboard and I see, okay, my target customer is, let's say, a 45-year-old middle manager, household income of $85,000, lives in a suburban zip code, maybe has 1.5 kids. I've got the data, so boom, I have the empathy, right?
Oh, man, that is exactly the trap.
Yeah.
That is the trap right there. Data gives you this illusion of understanding, which is incredibly dangerous because it creates false confidence.
Yeah.
Think about it like this. Demographics are just coordinates on a map, right? They tell you exactly where the person is standing, but they tell you absolutely nothing about what it actually feels like to stand there.
Okay, wow. That makes so much sense.
Mm.
It's like knowing someone's height and weight and assuming you know what it feels like to be them on a daily basis.
Precisely. Let me give you this staggering example from the source material that really highlights the cost of relying on those assumptions instead of radical empathy.
Oh, I love this one.
Yeah, so there was this production company shooting a television infomercial. The product they were selling was a home mortgage-related service. And the target audience was very, very specifically struggling Americans.
Like seriously struggling.
Right. We're talking about people who are behind on bills, people terrified of the phone ringing because, it might be a debt collector, people facing potential foreclosure, high stress, very low financial security.
Okay, so a very specific, very vulnerable demographic. The kind of people whose primary emotional state right now is probably just a constant low-grade panic.
Exactly. So the script calls for the spokesperson to walk into a living room to deliver the pitch. And he's supposed to start with the line, "Here in a typical American home."
Okay, seems standard.
Right. So the producer sets up the shot, calls action, and the spokesperson walks into this pristine, massive room. I'm talking immaculate white carpets and a giant grand piano sitting right in the center of the room as the focal point.
Wait, a grand piano? For an audience that literally can't pay their mortgage?
A grand piano on pristine white carpets. Now think about the cognitive dissonance happening there.
Is insane.
The producer, who, likely lives a very comfortable life, just projected their own internal definition of a nice living room right onto the set. But what happens in the brain of the struggling viewer?
I mean, before the spokesperson even finishes the sentence, the viewer's brain has already completely rejected the message.
Instantly. It's just basic pattern recognition. The visual cue of that white carpet and the piano, it signals to the viewer's amygdala, hey, this person is not in my tribe. This person does not understand my pain.
Yeah, they're an outsider.
Right. The viewer might not even be able to articulate why they suddenly hate the commercial, but the credibility is fundamentally destroyed in the very first visual frame. It's like trying to sell snow boots by showing a guy drinking a pina colada on a tropical beach. It just does not compute.
Right. So how do we avoid the grand piano mistake? I mean, if demographic data isn't enough, and our own assumptions are, like you said, inherently biased by our own lived experiences, what is the actual mechanism for getting this right?
Well, the author relies heavily on this psychological visualization technique that was developed by Dr. Maxwell Maltz.
Oh, this psychocybernetics guy.
Yes, Maltz was actually a plastic surgeon originally, and he realized that fixing people's physical faces didn't always fix their self-image, which led him to deeply study the mind. He coined this technique called the theater in your mind.
Okay, it sounds a bit like method acting for marketers. Like you can't just memorize your lines. You have to actually become the character to make the audience believe you.
That is a phenomenal way to frame it, really. Think about a great method actor playing someone who is grieving. They don't just, scrunch up their face and squeeze out a fake tear.
Right, they have to feel it.
They have to mentally go somewhere incredibly dark, tapping into a psychological state where the grief feels chemically real in their own body. And marketers have to do the exact same thing. You don't just think about the customer, you close your eyes and construct a hyper-realistic mental simulation of their life.
So walk me through what that actually looks like when you're just sitting at a desk trying to write a campaign.
Sure, you start at the very beginning of their day. You literally visualize them waking up.
Like how they get out of bed.
Yes. What wakes them up? Is it a blaring alarm clock? Is it a crying toddler? Are they waking up feeling rested? Or did they toss and turn all night because of some looming deadline at work? Then you follow them. They commute. They arrive at the office or whatever their workplace is.
And you really have to get granular here, right? Because the text talks about visualizing them actually interacting with your marketing material in real time.
Right down to the physical movement. So let's say you are sending them a direct mail piece or even just an email. You picture them sorting their mail. Are they standing over a wastebasket just aggressively throwing things away?
Oh, that's such a good image.
Right. Or if it's an email, are they swiping left on their phone while holding a hot cup of coffee on a crowded, shaky subway? What else is demanding their attention at that exact second? What are they complaining about to the person next to them?
Wow.
By forcing your brain to simulate this reality, you shift completely away from what you want to say, and you start answering the only question that matters, which is, what is important to them right now?
But let me push back on this for a second, because visualization can only go so far, right? I mean, if I have literally never been a middle-aged mother of 3 living in a rural area, I can close my eyes all day long, but I'm just guessing. I'm just hallucinating a reality based on stereotypes, aren't I?
Oh, that is the exact danger. And it's why visualization is really only part 2 of a larger process. Part 1 is grueling, unglamorous research.
Okay, so you have to do the work first.
Guessing is the enemy of empathy. If you don't know the reality, you have to go out and acquire it. And sometimes you have to go to extreme lengths.
Well, the examples in the text of what these top-tier marketers do are honestly borderline obsessive. Like Dan Kennedy talks about writing copy aimed at real estate agents. And he wasn't a real estate agent. He didn't know the first thing about their daily grind.
No, not at all.
So instead of just making it up, he went to the public library and read years' worth of back issues of their highly specific trade journals.
But that wasn't even enough for him?
No, because reading the formal literature only gives you the sanitized version of the industry. It gives you, like, the PR spin.
Exactly. So when a massive real estate convention came to his city, he didn't just buy a ticket. He went to the hotel where they were all staying, and he just sat in the lobby. He sat in the hotel bars, silently eavesdropping on their conversations.
Just listening in. Yeah. He even bought an agent lunch and just interrogated him for hours until he understood their tribal language, the slang, the inside jokes, the specific things they complained about after they'd had 3 drinks.
That is how you capture the reality. You have to find where the mask slips.
Yeah.
But if you think that's obsessive, consider the story of Jerry Jones. He's a marketer and business coach who provides services to dentists across the country.
Okay.
Now, he did all the standard research, read the industry publications, lurked in their private online discussion forums, walked the floors of their trade shows. But he felt he still didn't intimately understand the visceral day-to-day pressure of running a dental clinic.
So what did he do?
He bought 3 actual dental practices.
Wait, are you serious? He bought 3 businesses in an industry he didn't even work in just to understand the customers he was trying to sell to?
Yeah, 3 of them.
That is an insane level of commitment. Is that even scalable?
I mean, for him, it was essentially investing in a multi-million-dollar laboratory. He needed to truly play prospect. He needed to know what it felt like to deal with a broken x-ray machine on a Tuesday, or, a hygienist quitting without notice, or the terrifying reality of making payroll during a slow month.
Wow.
And because he immersed himself so completely, dentists frequently accuse him of secretly being a dentist. They read his copy and say, there's no way an outsider could know this.
That is the ultimate compliment, though. It means the method acting was flawless.
Completely flawless.
And the author did something similar when he was hired to write copy for Proactive, the acne medication. He had to target 3 completely different demographics, right?
Yeah.
The teenager suffering from acne, the mother of the teenager, and then the adult female who still struggles with breakouts.
Right. 3 totally different mindsets.
And he didn't just guess. He read nearly 100 different magazines targeting those specific groups. Teen zines, parenting magazines, women's lifestyle publications. He even hired freelance readers from those exact demographics just to critique his drafts and tell him, hey, you sound inauthentic here.
It's incredible. And the broader lesson here, especially for veterans in a business, is the danger of assumed knowledge.
Ooh, assumed knowledge.
Yeah. If you've been selling to the exact same group of people for a decade, you probably think you know them inside and out. But markets evolve, right? Anxieties shift, and your accumulated, untested opinions can so easily become your biggest blind spot. You really have to approach your audience as if you have amnesia, starting from scratch every single time.
That's a great point. Let's pivot slightly to what happens when you don't do this. Like, when you fail to gather the specific clay, you end up talking about things the customer fundamentally does not care about at all.
Oh, it happens all the time.
The text has this classic sales legend about the little old lady and a heating system that perfectly illustrates this disconnect.
I love that story. It's a brilliant parable about prioritizing the wrong information. So imagine a young, highly trained, hotshot salesman, right? He's pitching a state-of-the-art home heating system to a little old lady in her living room.
Okay, I can picture it.
And he just launches into this incredibly polished, highly technical presentation.
Like he's pulling out the glossy brochures, pointing at diagrams.
Exactly. He is lecturing her about the BTUs. The intricate gauge of the sheet metal, the patented construction materials, the microscopic details of the warranty, the efficiency ratings. I mean, he is absolutely in love with the machinery.
Hold on, I have to stop you. BTUs. I don't even know what that stands for, let alone what a little old lady would think it means.
Right. A BTU is a British thermal unit. It's just a standard measurement of heat energy. And engineers care deeply about BTUs. But the salesman made the fatal flaw of assuming that because he cared about the technical superiority of the machine, the customer naturally would too.
Right, so he finally finishes this massive technical monologue. He's probably out of breath, fully expecting her to just be blown away.
And what does she say?
She looks at him, totally unfazed, and asks, I have just one question. Will this thing keep a little old lady warm?
That is almost tragic. He spent all that energy proving how smart he was and completely ignored the only thing that actually mattered to her reality.
She didn't want a lesson in thermodynamics. She just wanted comfort. She wanted to know she wouldn't be shivering in her own home in January.
Yeah.
The salesman was totally blinded by his own priorities, the features of the product. He completely failed to tap into her priority, which is the basic human need for safety and warmth. In a face-to-face setting, you might get a second chance when she asks that question.
Right, you can pivot.
But if you write a sales page or record a video that focuses on BTUs instead of warmth, they just click away. You don't get the corrective feedback. You just lose the sale. It's so true. And we all know the old cliche, right? Features tell, benefits sell. But this goes deeper than just translating a feature into a benefit. It requires a brutally honest assessment of human motivation.
Yes, it really does.
The text gives us another example of this with the corporate charity letter for the Arthritis Foundation. And I think this one really pushes the boundary of what some people are comfortable admitting about human nature.
Oh, it really does, because it strips away the polite fiction we usually wrap around philanthropy.
Yeah.
So the author was tasked with writing a fundraising letter targeting corporate donors, CEOs, local business owners for an annual telethon. And before writing, he reviewed all the standard letters other nonprofits were sending out.
Let me guess. They were all basically just begging.
Completely. Just, we need this money desperately. Here is our noble mission. Here is the tragic suffering we are trying to alleviate. Please, please help us.
Which is entirely focused on the sender. It's the charity saying, look at our priorities, look at our needs.
Right. And while the cause is undeniably worthy, it violates the core rule. The reader cares about themselves. So the author used the theater in your mind technique again. He visualized being a busy, stressed out CEO.
Right, someone whose time is money.
Exactly. This CEO gets hit up for donations constantly. They have their own payroll to worry about, their own board of directors to answer to. If this executive is going to write a large check, what is the actual psychological trigger that will make them do it?
It's not just pure altruism, is it? We want to believe it is, but in a corporate setting, there has to be something else.
The author realized that while the CEO might be a very good person, the immediate trigger is ego and business utility.
Okay.
The CEO cares about local television exposure for their company. They care about positive public relations in their community, which drives sales. They care about the tax write-off. They care about the VIP experience. getting to walk onto a live TV set and shake hands with local celebrities.
So he completely scrapped the begging approach.
He threw it in the trash, he rewrote the letter, and he didn't even really ask for a donation. Instead, he presented them with this incredible PR and marketing package.
Oh, that's smart.
He offered them a chance to buy special, highly effective television exposure at a fraction of what standard advertising would cost. He offered them the spotlight. And the price of this amazing marketing package just happened to be a tax-deductible donation to the Arthritis Foundation.
It's a masterclass in alignment. He didn't try to make them care about arthritis more than they cared about their business. He just attached his goal to their existing desires.
Exactly. It requires a level of absolute pragmatism. You have to deal with the customer as they actually are, not as you wish they were.
Man, this brings us to a massively important mechanical strategy for getting into the prospect's head. The text introduces something called the Collier principle, named after Robert Collier, who was a legendary copywriter back in the 1930s. He sold everything from heavy machinery to self-help books through the mail.
The Collier principle is arguably the most valuable mental model in direct response marketing. It is essentially the law of momentum, Collier stated. Always enter the conversation already occurring in the customer's mind.
Into the conversation already occurring. Don't start a new one.
Right. The worst thing you can do as a marketer is arrive as an interruption. Think about the prospect's mind like a rushing river. If you jump into that river and try to swim upstream, trying to force them to care about a brand new topic they weren't previously thinking about at all, you are going to exhaust yourself and drown.
Yeah.
But if you can identify the direction the water is already flowing, what they are already worried about, already angry about, already discussing at the dinner table, and you align your message with that current, the momentum carries you effortlessly to your destination.
It's like walking up to a group of people at a party who are intensely debating the local sports team. You don't just butt in and scream, "Hey, I sell life insurance." They would look at you like you're a lunatic.
You'd be totally socially ostracized. But if you walk up, listen, realize they are complaining about how the team's defense is completely uninsured and vulnerable, you might casually say, you know, watching this defense collapse reminds me of what happens to a family when the primary breadwinner doesn't have a safety net. You bridge their existing passion to your proposition.
Right. So in a mass marketing context, how do you do this? How do you know what the river is doing when you can't actually hear their private conversations?
You have to monitor the zeitgeist. You look at the front pages of the newspapers. You look at what is trending on social media. You listen to talk radio. The text mentions a phenomenal example of a financial advisor named Matt Zagula, who specifically targets seniors and retirees for his wealth management seminars.
Usually those seminar invitations are incredibly dry, like come get a free steak dinner and learn about annuities.
And they get terrible response rates because they require the senior to suddenly care about annuities out of nowhere. But Zagula recognized a massive, roaring river in the minds of his prospects. At this specific time, there was intense national debate about government spending, healthcare reform, and potential cuts to Medicare. It was highly emotional. Seniors were terrified.
I want to pause right here and emphasize to the listener, we are not taking a political side on this issue. And the brilliance of this strategy is entirely agnostic of politics. We are purely looking at the mechanics of human attention.
Precisely. Zagula didn't care about the politics. He cared about the emotional velocity. He knew his target demographic was waking up every day, reading the newspaper, and getting angry and fearful about their Medicare benefits.
Right.
So he designed a sales letter disguised as an open letter to seniors that ran as a full-page ad. And the headline didn't say a word about financial planning. The headline was, "How will Obama's health care plan affect you?" followed by a subheadline, "New law imposes $500 billion in Medicare cuts."
Boom. He just cannonballed right into the exact conversation they were already having.
He tapped directly into their existing fear that the safety net they had paid into for decades was being snatched away. He positioned himself not as a salesman, but as an ally sounding the alarm.
Wow.
He dedicated the first half of the ad just to validating their anger and outlining the threat. Only after he had fully agitated that existing conversation did he introduce his solution, saying, "If you want to protect your assets from these impending changes, you need to attend my workshop."
And according to the text, this strategy filled his seminars at a fraction of the cost of his competitors who were still trying to swim upstream with the free steak dinner approach.
Because he didn't have to generate interest. The interest was already there, pre-packaged by the news cycle. He just harvested it.
Okay, so for the person listening to this who might not have a massive political issue to latch onto, How do they systematically figure out what is occupying their customer's mind? The author provides a diagnostic tool, right? The 10 smart questions.
Yes, these are the mandatory pre-flight checks. You cannot write effectively until you have documented highly specific answers to these 10 questions about your target prospect.
Let's spend some time unpacking the psychology behind the most important ones because they go far beyond basic demographics. Question 1. What keeps them awake at night? Indigestion, boiling up their esophagus, eyes open, staring at the ceiling.
Notice the visceral, almost biological language the author uses there. He doesn't just ask, what are their pain points? That's just corporate jargon.
Yeah, pain points is so boring.
Right. He wants to know what causes physiological stress at 2:20 a.m. In the middle of the night, our rational defenses drop and our primal anxieties take over. Is it the fear of missing payroll and having to fire someone that they've worked with for 5 years? Is it the dread that their teenager is falling in with a bad crowd? If you can identify the 2:30 a.m. thought, you have found the emotional core of their decision-making.
Let's look at questions 2 and 3 together because I think the contrast is fascinating. Question 2 is, what are they afraid of? But question 3 is, what are they angry about? And who are they angry at? Why is it so crucial to distinguish between fear and anger?
Because fear paralyzes. Anger mobilizes. Fear makes people want to hide, but anger makes people want to act, to seek retribution or to assert control. But the second half of that question, who are they angry at? That is the real secret weapon.
The tribal aspect.
Exactly. Human beings are deeply tribal. We define ourselves just as much by who our enemies are as by who our friends are. If you know who your prospect blames for their problems, whether it's the government, large corporations, their boss, a specific competitor, or even just the unfairness of the universe, you can position yourself alongside them.
Like an ally.
You create an us versus them dynamic. When you align with their anger, you bypass their logical filters entirely. They think, this person hates what I hate, therefore they are one of my people, therefore I can trust them.
It's incredibly powerful and a little terrifying how well it works. Let's skip down to question 6. What do they secretly, ardently desire most? The operative word there has to be secretly.
Yes, this is why focus groups are notoriously unreliable. If you put 10 people in a room and ask them why they bought a luxury car, they will tell you it's because of the safety ratings, the engineering, the resale value,
The logical, acceptable answers.
the socially acceptable fiction. But the secret, ardent desire, they want their neighbors to be jealous. They want to feel superior when they pull up to a stoplight next to someone in a Honda. They want to validate that they have made it. If you only market to the public desire, which is safety, you will lose to the marketer who subtly appeals to the secret desire, which is status.
Yeah, you have to decode what they will never admit in public but will gladly pay a premium for in private.
Exactly.
Let's do one more. Question 7. Is there a built-in bias to the way they make decisions?
This dictates the very format and tone of your clay. The text uses engineers as an example. Engineers are trained to be exceptionally analytical, skeptical, and reliant on empirical evidence. If your prospect is an engineer, your sales letter cannot be full of emotional fluff and grand promises. The claim must be dense with data, charts, peer-reviewed studies, and logical proofs.
But if I'm selling to, like, independent artists or musicians,
If you send that exact same data-heavy letter to an artist, their eyes glaze over immediately. Their built-in bias is toward aesthetics, narrative, emotion, and authenticity. The clay must be entirely different. You have to match the medium to the prospect's cognitive processing style.
okay, so let's summarize step 1. You cannot guess. You have to use the 10 smart questions to violently pull yourself out of your own perspective. You do the grueling research, you find their 2:0 a.m. fears, you identify their enemies, and you figure out the exact conversation already echoing in their mind. That's it. But here's the catch, and this bridges us perfectly to step 2. You can do all of that perfectly. You can know the customer's deepest, darkest fears. But if you then hold up your product and misdiagnose what it actually does for them, all that empathy is wasted. How do we ensure we aren't blind to our own product?
This is step 2, get into the offer. And it is the exact mirror image of getting into the customer. Because just as we assume we know our customers, we arrogantly assume we know our own products. We think, I built it, I sell it, of course I know what it is.
But what it is mechanically isn't what it is to the buyer.
Precisely. You have to crawl around inside your product or service. You have to test it, try to break it, and most importantly, use it exactly as a naive consumer would. You are looking for the translation layer between the physical reality of the product and the psychological reality of the user's life.
This goes way past the basic features versus benefits concept, doesn't it? I feel like we get taught that in Business 101. The feature is the umbrella's Teflon coating. The benefit is that it keeps you dry. But Kennedy pushes this into a much more uncomfortable psychological territory.
He pushes it to the ultimate logical conclusion. You have to find what we might call the hidden lifestyle benefit, the ultimate freedom, relief, or joy that the physical thing actually facilitates. You are not selling the mechanism, you are selling the destination.
The text has this incredible story about Pamela Yellen that crystallizes this. It's the insurance recruiting story. I want you to walk through this because the environmental context of this story is what makes it so brilliant.
It's a perfect case study in unearthing the hidden benefit. Pamela Yellen was a highly successful consultant, and she was hosting a very expensive multi-day seminar in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The attendees were corporate executives and general agents from massive life insurance companies.
So this wasn't a cheap retreat. These people paid thousands of dollars, flew across the country, stayed in expensive hotels. And the topic of the seminar was critical to their survival.
The topic was advanced methodologies for recruiting insurance agents. In the insurance business, if you aren't constantly recruiting, you are dying. Turnover is high. So you would rationally assume that these highly paid executives who had traveled great distances at great expense were absolutely laser focused on the technical minutia of the recruiting system Pamela was teaching.
Because that's literally what they paid for, the feature.
Right. But Pamela and the author were observing the attendees closely, and they noticed a massive discrepancy between what the seminar was about and what the attendees actually cared about when they weren't in the conference room.
Oh, this is the best part.
During the coffee breaks, at lunch, in the hotel bar in the evenings, what were these high-powered executives discussing?
It wasn't recruiting metrics, I'll tell you that. It wasn't interview techniques or retention rates.
Not at all. They were talking obsessively about golf. They were arguing over handicaps, discussing which courses they were going to play that afternoon, comparing their new titanium drivers. Golf was their true passion. Recruiting was just the agonizing chore they had to do to afford the golf.
That observation right there is the hinge point. Because when Pamela went to write an advertisement to sell this exact same recruiting system in industry trade journals later on, she could have written a very standard, logical headline. Something like, increase your agent retention by 20% with advanced methodologies.
If she had written that, it would have performed averagely. It appeals to the logical brain. But because she had done the method acting and observed their true behavior, she changed the clay entirely.
She wrote an ad with this absolute powerhouse of a headline. Puts recruiting on autopilot so you can go play golf.
Think about the psychological architecture of that headline. It still sells the exact same recruiting machinery. It still promises all the professional metrics, but it does so circuitously by aiming directly at the secret, ardent desire. The subtext of the ad is, I know you hate recruiting. I know it's tedious. If you buy my system, it will handle the chore for you, freeing up your time so you can get back to the golf course where you actually want to be.
She sold the lifestyle freedom. The recruiting system was just the vehicle, the taxi cab, to get them to the golf course faster.
Exactly. Let's apply this to a modern hypothetical for the listener. Let's say you sell a B2B SaaS product, a software that automates accounting for small businesses. If you don't do step 2, you write an ad that says, automated ledger reconciliation. That's the feature.
If you are slightly better at marketing, you write the benefit. Saves you 10 hours a month on bookkeeping.
Which is better, sure, but still sterile. But if you deeply understand the customer and you deeply understand the hidden lifestyle benefit of your software, what do you write?
You're right. Stop missing your kids' Saturday morning soccer games because you're stuck at the office doing the books.
Boom! Which one of those 3 options is going to make a stressed out, guilt-ridden small business owner pull out their corporate credit card?
The soccer game. Every single time. It hits them right in the heart. But you can only write that headline if you understand the invisible bridge between your product's function and your customer's deepest emotional pain.
Exactly.
Okay, this brings us to step 3. And I have to be honest, when I read this section of the outline, I wanted to throw a flag on the play. Step 3 is create a damaging admission and address flaws openly. The author is literally instructing us to highlight the worst parts of our product in our sales pitch.
Yes, identifying, acknowledging, and even spotlighting the flaws, the disadvantages, and the unattractive points of your offer is actually one of the most powerful accelerants for making a sale.
I need to push back hard on this. Let's role play for a second. If I'm selling a premium $10,000 consulting package, and I open my pitch by saying, hi, I'm expensive, I'm sometimes disorganized with my emails, and my process is really rigid. The client isn't going to think I'm trustworthy. They're going to run for the hills. Isn't this just business suicide? Where is the line between a strategic flaw and a fatal flaw?
Ah, that is the crucial distinction. You do not admit to a fatal flaw that undermines the core competency of your promise. If you are a surgeon, you don't say, I have shaky hands.
Right, that's a fatal flaw.
But you might say, I have terrible bedside manner and I won't hold your hand, but I am the most precise technician in the state. That is a strategic character-building flaw.
Okay, that makes sense. So why does this work psychologically? Why does admitting a flaw actually help you sell?
Because of the environment in which we are selling. We live in a world absolutely saturated by hype. Every single product claims to be a revolutionary paradigm shift. The absolute best, the cheapest, the fastest.
Everyone says they're number one.
Right. And consumers have adapted to this environment by developing an incredibly thick armor of skepticism. When they read a sales pitch, their guard is fully up. The drawbridge is raised. They are actively, aggressively looking for the catch. If it sounds too good to be true, it is.
So when you proactively step forward and offer up the catch yourself,
The dynamic instantly shifts. When you make a damaging admission, something fascinating happens in the reader's brain. The natural skepticism short circuits. They think, wait a minute, this person is voluntarily telling me the downside. They aren't trying to hide anything. They aren't just blowing smoke. And the drawbridge lowers.
it builds credibility out of thin air.
It creates unshakable credibility.
Yeah.
Because you've built that foundation of trust with a negative truth, when you inevitably pivot to present the positive benefits of your product, the reader's resistance is totally gone. They are infinitely more likely to believe your grand promises because you proved you were willing to tell them an ugly truth first.
The text suggests a very mechanical exercise for doing this, the 3x5 card exercise.
It's a brilliant way to force yourself out of the hype mindset. Before you write a single word of copy, you get a stack of blank 3x5 index cards. On each card, you write down one specific reason why a customer will not buy from you.
You essentially build a prosecution case against your own product.
Exactly. You write down every objection, every fear, every excuse, and every genuine shortcoming. Is your product significantly more expensive than the competitor? Put it on a card. Does it take a long time to install? Card. Does it require the user to change their daily habits? Card. You face the disadvantages head on.
And then you proactively weave those cards into the copy. You beat them to the punch. The text gives an amazing, very tangible example of this in action from a local Italian restaurant. I want to dissect this letter because it is a masterclass in anti-marketing.
It perfectly illustrates how to turn a competitive disadvantage into a compelling, magnetic selling story.
So this local restaurant owner writes a sales letter to mail to residents in the surrounding neighborhoods. He doesn't try to compete with the fancy downtown bistros on their terms. Instead, he openly, almost aggressively, admits his flaws right in the opening paragraphs. The letter says, if you want waiters in tuxedos with white linen cloths over their arms, don't come here. We don't have $100 bottles of wine.
Let's pause and analyze that. He is literally paying postage to tell people not to come to his business. He is highlighting his lack of elegance, his lack of a sophisticated wine list, his lack of formality. He is admitting we are not a 5-star white tablecloth establishment.
But then comes the pivot. However, the letter continues. But if you want great food, huge portions, a fun, chaotic family atmosphere, and free Chianti, we are your place.
It's masterful. By openly and starkly stating what they are not, they make their claim about what they are completely 100% believable. If that owner had just sent a standard postcard saying, we have the best Italian food in town, it would have been instantly ignored as standard, invisible advertising puffery. Everyone says they have the best food.
But because he admitted they don't have tuxedos, you instantly believe him when he says the portions are huge. And it serves a dual purpose, right?
Yeah.
It builds trust, but it also acts as a ruthless filtering mechanism.
That is the secret, secondary power of the damaging admission. You use your flaws as a bouncer at the door of your business. You use them to politely but firmly turn away the wrong customers. Think about it. If someone receives that letter and they genuinely want a quiet, romantic, tuxedo-clad, $100 bottle of wine anniversary dinner, this letter saves them from making a terrible mistake.
Right.
If they had come to the chaotic family joint, they would have hated it, they would have complained to the manager, they would have tipped poorly, and they would have gone online and written a scathing 1-star review.
So the damaging admission just saved the business from a bad review.
Exactly. But look at the flip side. For the right customer, the family of 4 looking for a loud, filling, affordable, unstuffy Tuesday night dinner, this letter is incredibly magnetic. It fiercely attracts them. It says, we are exactly for you, and we don't pretend to be anything else.
The takeaway here for the listener is profound. Do not hide your product's shortcomings. Put a spotlight on them. If your software has a steep learning curve, put it right in the headline. This software is complex, and it will take you a full weekend to learn it. But once you do, you will have a superpower your competitors don't.
If your coaching program is wildly expensive, say it up front. This is a premium investment. It is not for the faint of heart or the casually interested. Use your flaws to build immense trust and to magnetize your ideal buyers while simultaneously repelling the tire kickers who would only drain your energy anyway.
It's such a refreshing approach. It takes all the sleaze and the anxiety out of selling because you no longer have to pretend to be perfect. Okay, let's zoom out and synthesize what we've covered today. Let's bring it back to the metaphor in the chapter's title, the clay with which to mold.
The foundational premise of this entire philosophy is that writing effective sales copy or delivering an effective pitch is an assembly process. You are building a machine, and you cannot build a functional machine, you cannot assemble a masterpiece if you haven't painstakingly gathered high-quality materials first.
You cannot mold a masterpiece out of dry dirt.
The soul of this chapter, the ultimate truth it reveals, is that true persuasion is never born from clever tricks or manipulative wordplay or grammatical gymnastics. True persuasion is born from a potent combination of radical empathy and radical honesty.
It's a three-step foundation. First, you deeply, intimately understand the customer's mind. You abandon your assumptions. You do the method acting. You visualize their Tuesday morning. You figure out their 2 a.m. fears. You identify their anger. And you figure out how to smoothly enter the conversation that is already rushing like a river through their mind.
Second, you turn that same intense critical focus onto your own offer. You unearth the true hidden lifestyle benefit. You stop selling the technical features, you stop selling the BTUs, and you start selling the warmth. You start selling the golf game, the freedom, the time with their kids.
And third, you boldly and openly admit your imperfections. You use damaging admissions to disarm their natural skepticism, build unshakable credibility, and filter out the prospects who aren't right for you anyway.
When you execute these 3 steps before you ever start writing, a fundamental shift happens in the relationship between you and the market. You stop being an annoying pest, constantly interrupting people, pushing a product onto an unwilling, skeptical audience. Instead, you transform. You become a welcome guest, arriving at exactly the right time, offering a genuine, tailored solution to someone who actually understands that you understand them.
From an annoying pest to a welcome guest. That is a massive paradigm shift. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. I hope you're walking away with a completely new toolkit and a new perspective on how to prepare for your next big pitch, your next presentation, or your next marketing campaign. Don't start with a blank page. Start with the clay.
Absolutely.
Next time, we're going to look at the incredible hazards your finished message faces once it actually goes out into the real world. We'll explore how to get your letter past ruthless administrative gatekeepers, how to keep it out of the trash can, and how to get it actually opened in the fascinating chapter titled Salmon Swimming Upstream. You absolutely won't want to miss that one.
And before we go today, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to chew on. Before you write another word for your business, before you try to persuade anyone of anything today, look at what you are selling and ask yourself this. If you were absolutely forced at gunpoint to sell your product or service's biggest flaw as its best feature, exactly how would you do it?
Imagine for a moment that you are on a phone call. And I mean, this is not just any phone call. It's an incredibly important, high-stakes conversation.
Right, like a make or break moment.
Exactly. Maybe it's a client who has been on the fence for, I don't know, 6 months, and they are finally ready to verbalize their agreement to this massive contract that's basically going to make your entire year. Or maybe it's a doctor, right? And you are getting test results you've been losing sleep over for weeks.
Oh, man. Yeah, the tension there is real.
It is. The point is, the outside world has completely faded away for you. You are locked in, just hanging on every single syllable, and then suddenly a stranger starts ringing your doorbell.
Which is just, I mean, the absolute worst timing.
The worst. You ignore it, obviously, because you are busy. Your attention is fully spoken for.
Yeah.
But this person, they do not stop. They ring it relentlessly, just pressing the button down and holding it.
Yeah, being super aggressive.
Right. And when that doesn't work, they start banging on your front door with the side of their fist, rattling the hinges. When you still don't answer, you literally hear footsteps crunching through your side yard, and a moment later, they are at the back of your house, pounding furiously on your sliding glass door.
Which, honestly, in the middle of a vital moment like that, is just about the most intrusive, infuriating thing another human being can do.
It is the ultimate intrusion. I mean, they have crossed the line from being a minor distraction into becoming the ultimate annoying pest. You are absolutely furious.
Oh, I'll be livid.
So you finally excuse yourself from this vital phone call. You put the doctor or the client on hold. You march over to that sliding glass door and you yank it open, fully prepared to just absolutely tear this person a new one. You are ready to unleash a wave of anger.
I can picture it perfectly.
But then, within like 5 seconds of opening that door, this incredibly annoying stranger transforms into a highly welcomed, cherished guest. The anger completely evaporates. You are thanking them profusely. You are scrambling to grab a garden hose. You are treating them like they're your best friend in the world.
And why is that?
It's simple. The second you opened the door, they pointed past your shoulder and told you that your backyard shrubbery was on fire.
Wow. Yeah, it's such a visceral, amazing scenario. And it really perfectly encapsulates the core underlying tension of what we are unpacking today.
It really does.
I mean, the sheer speed of that emotional pivot from viewing someone as an unforgivable pest to an absolute savior, that is the entire foundation of effective communication.
And it leads us directly to this incredibly bold statement from the foundational text we are studying today. The premise is basically this. If your marketing message or your email, your pitch, your presentation, whatever, if it isn't immediately telling your customer that their shrubbery is on fire, you are just an annoying pest banging on their glass door.
And they are going to ignore you or, worse, actively resent you.
Exactly. So what is our mission today? What are we really digging into with these source materials for this deep dive?
Well, our mission today is to explore the brutal, unfiltered reality of getting your message delivered, looked at, and actually read in a world that, quite frankly, fundamentally wants to ignore you.
Yeah, people are busy.
They are. We are looking at some of the most influential foundational texts on direct response marketing. Specifically, we're focusing on Chapter 3, which is often referred to in these circles as Salmon Swimming Upstream.
I love that title.
Right. It's great. Because for anyone listening who is interested in business or entrepreneurship, scaling an idea, or just getting a notoriously busy person to pay attention to what you have to say, mastering the architecture of human attention is simply non-negotiable.
Yeah, you have to understand how people think.
Exactly. So we are going to look at the physical and psychological sorting processes that every single message goes through. We'll explore how to survive the literal wastebasket, how to instantly pivot from an annoying pest into a welcomed guest, like in your story.
Right.
And we'll get into how to structure your headlines to demand engagement and how to tailor these tactics based on whether you are talking to, say, a skeptical consumer or a heavily guarded CEO.
Because the reality is the gap between your ideas generating massive revenue or just ending up in the trash, it's entirely dictated by how well you understand the mechanisms we are about to discuss.
100%.
And the trash, right? The literal or digital wastebasket is the true formidable enemy here. Our source text paints this highly amusing but honestly kind of terrifying picture of what happens to a sales letter or a marketing campaign, the literal moment it leaves your hands.
Yeah, it compares the journey of your marketing message to a salmon swimming upstream to spawn.
It's such a vivid image.
It is a brilliant, highly accurate metaphor, and I think we should follow it all the way up the river today. Because if you think about the life cycle of a salmon, right from the moment it leaves the ocean and hits the mouth of the river, the odds are entirely mathematically stacked against it.
Yeah, everything wants to eat it.
Exactly. It is an environment of active hostility. The current is fighting them. There are rapids they have to navigate. There are literal bears standing in the shallows with open claws just waiting to pluck them out of the air.
Yeah.
And, if they somehow survive the bears, there are fishermen casting nets.
So your message, this beautifully designed brochure, or your meticulously crafted email, or this expensive direct mail piece you just paid for, it faces the exact same lethal gauntlet.
Mm-hmm.
And the very first bear, standing in the river, just waiting to destroy your message before it even gets started, is the physical sorting process.
Oh, absolutely.
I want to break down this sorting process because, to understand it, the text brings up a rule from one of the absolute legends of direct response marketing, a guy named Gary Halbert.
Oh, Halbert is a legend.
He really is. He insisted that if you want to be successful, you have to burn a very specific image into your brain. You have to literally picture the person receiving your message standing directly next to a wastebasket.
Yep.
They've just walked back from their mailbox. They have a stack of mail in their hands, and they are standing right over the trash, mechanically sorting it into two distinct piles.
Right, the A pile and the B pile.
Yeah.
And what we have to understand here is that this is not just some quirky habit people have. This is human neurobiology and cognitive defense in action.
Okay, break that down for us.
Sure. Let's look at the A pile first. The A pile is personal. It is important. It consists of letters that look like they came from a friend, or maybe a handwritten note from a grandmother, a wedding invitation, or it's official business that carries real consequence.
Like a notice from the IRS.
Exactly. Or a utility bill you know you have to pay. The brain registers the visual cues of these envelopes and immediately categorizes them as belonging in the recipient's life. So they survive the sort.
But then you have the B pile.
Right, the dreaded B pile. This is mass mail. It's junk. It's anything that screams, I am a stranger and I spent a fraction of a penny to interrupt your day so I can ask you for money.
Right, the glossy postcards.
Glossy postcards, envelopes with neon teaser copy on the outside. You know, those things with fake plastic windows showing a promotional code.
Oh, I hate those.
We all do. And the crucial mechanism here is why the recipient sorts this way. The modern human brain is subjected to an overwhelming, just crushing cognitive load every day. We are bombarded with thousands of micro decisions and advertisements.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
So standing over that wastebasket and aggressively dumping the B pile into the trash without even opening it, that is a biological defense mechanism. It is the brain's way of conserving energy.
Because if we read everything, we'd never get anything done.
Exactly. If the brain had to open and deeply evaluate every single piece of junk mail to determine its value, we would never get anything else done. So we rely on heuristics, which are mental shortcuts based purely on the exterior packaging.
And where does the B pile go? Straight into the wastebasket. It doesn't get opened. It doesn't get read. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
Which means your absolute primary objective, the only thing that matters before anything else can even be considered, is simply surviving that physical sort.
Yeah, just making it past the trash can.
Right. If you end up in the B pile, the game is over. I mean, you could have written the most persuasive, brilliant, life-changing copywriting in human history inside that envelope. You could be offering a product that cures all their ailments for free. It does not matter. The bear ate the salmon. The message is gone.
So the obvious multi-million-dollar question is, how do we survive the sort? How do we actually get past the bear?
Willie.
The text details two very distinct, almost completely opposite strategies for this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it all depends on the relationship you currently have with the person holding the envelope.
That's right. Let's look at strategy A first. This is for when you are reaching out to cold prospects.
People who have never heard of you?
Exactly. They don't know your brand, and they have absolutely zero existing trust in you. You like to call this the sneak-up approach, right?
Yeah, the sneak-up approach. It makes sense to me.
It's a great name for it. The sneak-up approach is essentially an exercise in camouflage. If the brain is looking for visual cues to discard your mail, you have to remove all of those cues. You want to look, feel, and smell exactly like the A pile.
So what does that look like in practice?
The source material suggests using a simple, plain craft paper envelope or just a standard white number 10 business envelope. You absolutely do not use a window envelope that exposes a barcode or a mass-printed address.
Because the brain instantly flags that as commercial bulk mail.
Instantly. Instead, you personally address it. You use a font that looks like a high-quality typewriter, or even better, you use actual physical handwriting.
That handwriting detail is huge. I know if I see blue ink that has slightly pooled at the edges of the cursive letters, my brain instantly tells me a human hand held a pen and wrote my name. That feels deeply personal.
Yeah, and it creates friction against the act of throwing it away. We are socially conditioned to feel a slight pang of guilt when we throw away a personal letter unread.
That's so true.
Furthermore, the strategy dictates that you only put your personal name and a standard return address in the top left corner. You do not put your corporate logo. You do not put a catchy slogan like, open immediately for special offer.
Right, none of that.
You remove anything and everything that gives away the fact that a salesperson is hiding inside the envelope.
Whoa.
You are creating a visual blank slate that forces the recipient to open it just to resolve the curiosity of who sent it.
The text also mentions a modern variation of this sneak-up approach, which I thought was really smart. It's using FedEx or priority mail envelopes.
Oh, that is a phenomenal evolution of the tactic. And it plays on a slightly different psychological heuristic. Think about the physical, tactile experience of receiving a stiff, cardboard FedEx package. You do not sort a FedEx envelope while standing over the kitchen trash can.
No way. I put it on my kitchen island, and I usually rip it open before I even take off my coat.
Precisely. Because a FedEx envelope carries an inherent, undeniable weight of importance. The recipient subconsciously does the math. They think, someone paid $15 or $20 to overnight this specific document to me, therefore it must contain something significant.
The medium itself becomes the message.
Exactly. It bypasses the B-pile heuristic completely because the brain categorizes FedEx as inherently urgent, I-pile material.
Okay, so that's strategy A, the sneak-up approach for cold prospects. But strategy B is completely different. This is what I call the loud approach. And the text is very clear that this is specifically, exclusively for mailing established customers.
Right. People who already know you.
Yeah, people who have already bought from you, who subscribe to your newsletter, and who already have a baseline level of trust in your brand.
The dynamics of the sorting process change entirely when there is an existing relationship. With established customers, you don't need to sneak past their defenses in a plain white envelope. When they scan the mail and see your company name or your logo, their brain doesn't trigger the junk mail heuristic. Instead, it triggers a memory of past value.
Because they already associate you with a positive experience.
Exactly. Because of that existing trust, you have permission to use the outside of the envelope to start doing the heavy lifting immediately. You can print what we call teaser copy right on the front. You can make big, bold promises, use vibrant colors, splash your logo everywhere, and essentially start the sales process before they even rip the paper.
It's like the text points out, you can't be half pregnant with your packaging.
Right.
You either strip it down completely and sneak up quietly, or you come in loud and proud. If you try to do a little bit of both, like a plain envelope but with a tiny logo, or a colorful envelope with a boring corporate return address, you just trigger the defense mechanisms without gaining the benefits of either strategy.
It's the worst of both worlds.
Yeah. But I want to pivot slightly here, because while we are talking about physical mail, I can't help but map this onto my daily life. This physical sorting behavior, the standing over the wastebasket, this is exactly how we scan our digital inboxes today, isn't it?
Oh, without a doubt.
Because when I wake up, I grab my phone, I open my email app, and I am mentally standing over a digital wastebasket. My thumb is just hovering there, swiping left, swiping left, swiping left. I am ruthlessly deleting everything that looks like a newsletter I don't remember signing up for, or a brand yelling at me in all caps with excessive emojis. I am aggressively sorting the digital A pile from the digital B pile in a matter of seconds.
Technology has evolved, sure, but the underlying neurobiology hasn't changed a fraction of a percent. Only the medium is different.
Right.
When you are scrolling through that inbox, your brain is performing the exact same heuristic checks as it did with physical envelopes. You are looking for sender names you recognize, friends, colleagues, your boss. That's the digital A pile.
And if the sender name is an abstract brand,
then your brain looks at the subject line. If the subject line looks templated, heavily capitalized, or mass-produced, it triggers the B-pile reflex, and you swipe left.
it's in con.
Right. If you want to use the sneak-up approach in email, it looks like a subject line that is entirely in lowercase letters, perhaps with a slight grammatical imperfection. Something simple like, quick question about Tuesday.
That subject line looks exactly like it came from a coworker typing quickly on their phone.
It mimics the A-pile perfectly.
Okay, wait. I have to jump in here and push back on this, because this is where I start to feel a friction point.
Go for it.
If I use the sneak-up approach, whether it's a plain craft envelope with a handwritten address or an email subject line that says, quick question about Tuesday, and I successfully bypass their mental sorting process, aren't I setting myself up for a massive backlash?
How?
Well, if I receive an envelope that looks like a personal letter from a friend, and I take the time to open it, and I pull out a blatant pitch for life insurance, I am not just going to throw it away. I'm going to actively hate that brand. I will feel tricked. It feels like a Trojan horse.
Yeah.
Doesn't this approach just piss the customer off and burn the lead instantly?
That is the ultimate danger of the sneak-up approach. And it is the exact reason why so many marketers get it wrong and end up destroying their brand equity. You are highlighting the absolute knife edge of this strategy.
It just feels risky.
It is risky. The sneak-up approach is not a magic trick to make someone buy something they don't want. The camouflage only exists to neutralize their automatic, conditioned reflex to throw things away before they evaluate them. You are essentially borrowing a few seconds of their attention under the guise of being personal.
Just a few seconds.
Yes. But, and this is the absolute crux of the matter, the moment they open that envelope or click that email, the camouflage drops. And you'd better have something incredibly, undeniably relevant to say. The inside of the envelope must immediately justify the disguise.
Oh, it brings us right back to the guy banging on the sliding glass door in the hook.
Exactly. Think about the mechanics of that interaction. Was the stranger acting deceptively by running into your backyard and pounding on the glass to get your attention? He was certainly using an extreme disruptive method to bypass your gatekeeper, which, in that case, was your focus on the phone call.
Right, he was interrupting me big time.
But when you opened the door, were you angry that he interrupted you? No, because the very first words out of his mouth were, "Your shrubbery is on fire." He had vital, urgent information that you genuinely needed. He saved your house.
The interruption was instantly justified by the immense value of the message.
Bingo. If you use the sneak-up approach to get them to open the mail, and your opening line is, "We offer competitive rates on commercial plumbing supplies," you are the guy banging on the glass door just to ask if they want to buy a vacuum cleaner.
Oh, man, yeah. They will slam the door in your face and never speak to you again.
Exactly. But if they open it, and the first line addresses a massive bleeding problem in their industry that you can solve, they will forgive the plain envelope because you brought the fire extinguisher.
That makes total sense. The disguise buys you a 1-second audition, but the content has to earn the right to stay in the room.
That's a great way to put it.
It really makes you look at your own outbound communications through a completely different lens, doesn't it? If my email subject line looks like a flashing billboard, I am volunteering for their digital bee pile. I'm actively asking to be deleted.
You're jumping into the wastebasket yourself.
So let's say we did it. We used the plain envelope. We swam past the first bear standing in the river. We survived the wastebasket sort. The prospect has actually torn open the envelope, or they've clicked on our email. We are inside the fortress.
We made it inside.
But the battle isn't even close to being over. As we just discussed, the camouflage has dropped, the disguise is gone. We now have roughly 1 single second to justify why we are interrupting their day. And that brings us to the second major concept from the text, moving from pest to guest.
This is the moment of truth. This is where we have to force the reader's eyes wide open and flood their brain with relevance.
How do we do that?
To explain how this works mechanically, the source text revisits a very classic, universally foundational formula in sales and psychology. AI. AIDA. It is an acronym that stands for attention, interest, desire, action. Right. And this is not just a sales trick. It is the orderly, logical sequence that the human brain must pass through before it will commit to any new idea. Whether you are selling a product, pitching a project to your boss, or even trying to convince your spouse where to go for dinner.
And the very first step in that sequence is A, attention, which anchors us back to the harsh truth we established at the beginning. No one, anywhere, is sitting around at their desk praying to receive your sales pitch.
They absolutely are not. When your letter arrives on their desk or your email pops up on their screen, you are arriving as an unwelcome pest. You are an uninvited interruption in the movie of their life. They were doing something else, thinking about their mortgage, stressing over a deadline, daydreaming about lunch, and you just barged in.
So how do you become a guest?
To survive that initial 1-second audition and earn guest status, you must immediately say something that the recipient's brain recognizes as urgently important, valuable, or beneficial to them. Not to you, not to your company's quarterly goals, but to them.
I want to look at the exact opposite of this to really illustrate the point. Because the source text provides a hilariously bad example of how not to grab attention.
Oh, I love this part.
We've established the burning shrubbery as the gold standard of relevance. But contrast that with this incredibly misguided gimmick the author of our text actually received in the mail.
It's so bad.
It is. So someone sent the author a letter. They opened it, and printed right across the top of the page in big, alarming letters was a warning. It read, "Warning, this letter is impregnated with a hazardous chemical activated if discarded unread. Minutes after being discarded, the letter's chemical will interact with other components in your wastebasket and explode into a giant grizzly bear that may eat you alive."
I mean, it is utterly absurd. It reads like a Saturday morning cartoon.
It does. Do not discard this letter unread because it will turn into a bear.
A giant grizzly bear.
And how did the author react to this? He thought it was such a perfectly terrible example of marketing that he took a pair of scissors, clipped off the top panel to save it for a seminar, and then he threw the rest of the letter in the trash without reading a single word of the actual pitch.
The gimmick completely spectacularly failed.
And if we break down the psychological mechanics of why that gimmick failed, it reveals everything you need to know about the transition from attention to interest.
Exactly. Did the exploding grizzly bear grab his attention? Yes, absolutely. If you read a sentence about a hazardous chemical turning into a bear, your brain is going to pause. It breaks the visual and cognitive pattern,
You can't not look at it.
but it instantly, irreversibly destroyed the second step of the ADA formula, interest.
Why is that?
Because the human brain is highly sensitive to being manipulated. The moment the author's brain processed the sentence, it realized, this is a blatant lie. It is a cheap trick designed to force me to read. It destroyed all credibility instantly.
Right, because if a brand is willing to lie to you in the very first sentence just to get your attention, why would you trust a single claim they make about their product?
Exactly. Furthermore, it offered absolutely no genuine value to the reader's life.
It's the equivalent of yelling fire in a crowded theater, just so you can get everyone to look at you while you try to sell them popcorn. People aren't going to buy the popcorn, they're going to trample you on the way out.
Exactly. Now, compare the exploding bear to the passing motorist pointing at the burning shrubbery. The passing motorist did not use a gimmick. He didn't put on a clown suit, he didn't blow an air horn, he didn't scream about a bear. He simply presented highly relevant, urgently important information.
Your shrubbery is on fire.
Right. He offered immense, undeniable value. The mechanism here is that gimmicks might hijack the optic nerve for a millisecond, but they breed resentment in the mind. Genuine relevance, however, breeds deep, sustained engagement.
I completely agree with the premise, but I have to put myself in the shoes of someone listening to this who might be struggling to apply it. I have to challenge this relevance idea slightly.
Okay, let's hear it.
Your shrubbery is on fire is a literal, tangible emergency. It threatens property and life. If I sell cybersecurity software, it's easy to say your server is on fire because hackers are a real threat.
Right, it's a direct parallel.
But what if I sell something positive? What if my product is fundamentally about enhancement, not rescue? Let's say I'm a travel agent specializing in luxury vacations to Hawaii. Or I'm a nutritionist selling a daily vitamin regimen that makes you feel more energized. I don't have a metaphorical fire extinguisher to sell. I'm selling sunshine and wellness. How do I yell fire when my product is a pina colada?
That is perhaps the most common point of friction people encounter when they study direct response principles. But we have to understand that the fire is just a metaphor.
Okay, explain that.
The fire represents intense emotional relevance. It does not have to be a literal life or death emergency. The brain processes intense desires and intense frustrations with the same level of priority as it processes minor emergencies.
Oh, I see.
The fire can be an ardent, consuming desire that keeps your prospect daydreaming at their desk when they should be working. Or it can be a chronic, hidden frustration that acts like a pebble in their shoe every single day of their life.
Ah, okay. So if I'm the travel agent selling that luxury Hawaiian vacation, I shouldn't just send a brochure with a picture of a beach and a price tag.
No, because that doesn't tap into the emotion.
The fire I need to point out might be the intense, bone-deep burnout they're feeling after working 60-hour weeks for years straight without a break. It's the guilt they feel because they haven't spent uninterrupted quality time with their spouse in months.
Precisely. The stress, the exhaustion, the feeling of letting their youth slip away while they stare at spreadsheets, that is the fire burning in their backyard. Your luxury vacation is the water.
That shifts the whole perspective.
Or take your vitamin example. If you just say, buy my vitamins, they have B12, you are a pest. You are just listing ingredients. But what is the fire in that prospect's life? The fire might be that heavy, sluggish brain fog they get every single afternoon at 3 p.m. that ruins their productivity, makes them snap at their kids when they get home, and leaves them feeling inadequate.
Wow. Yeah.
You have to find the specific emotional fire burning in their world. Once you identify that, you don't need a cheap gimmick like an exploding bear. You just hold up a mirror to their pain or their desire.
It really forces you to step out of your own ego. Stop trying to be overly clever. Stop trying to invent cute theatrical openings. If you want to transition from a pest to a guest, you just need to identify the most urgent, high-value benefit you offer, the direct answer to their burning desire or their deepest frustration, and put it at the very front of your communication.
Put it right up front.
Which leads us perfectly into the tactical application of this. Knowing that you need to put the value at the front of the message is the strategy. But how do we physically execute that on the page or on the screen?
That is the big question.
This brings us to our third major exploration, the architecture of attention. And we are talking specifically about headlines and flags, because the source material gets intensely practical here. It explains that the headline is the ultimate, undisputed gatekeeper of the reader's attention.
It is the single most critical piece of real estate in any medium, period. Whether it is the bold text at the top of a letter, the subject line of an email, the title of a YouTube video, or the hook text on a TikTok.
Everything relies on it.
If the headline fails to capture that interest we just talked about, the rest of the letter physically does not exist to the reader. They will not read the second paragraph if the headline doesn't force them to.
To ensure the headline doesn't get missed, the text introduces a fascinating historical formatting trick called the Johnson box.
Ah, yes, the Johnson box.
If you've ever studied old-school direct mail, you have definitely seen these. A Johnson box is a formatting technique where the copywriter places their main headline inside a literal rectangular box made entirely out of asterisks, placed at the very top of the letter.
Just a big box of stars.
Right. And crucially, this box is positioned before the salutation.
Right.
Before it even says, "Dear Mr. Smith," there is a giant box of asterisks containing a bold claim. Why was it so effective?
It comes down to visual processing and saccadic eye movements. When you open a standard professional business letter, your eye and your brain have been trained over decades to follow a very specific visual pattern.
Yeah, you know where to look.
You look at the top right for the date, you look at the top left for the address block, then your eye drops down to find the salutation. Dear John.
It's automatic.
The Johnson box acts as a massive visual disruption. It interrupts that ingrained visual pattern. The brain sees this strange asterisk-bordered box floating at the top of the page, and it cannot help but look at it. It forces the eye to stop its normal scanning routine and read the core benefit before it can do anything else. It forces the headline right into the reader's optic nerve.
And what actually goes inside that box? Or, in modern terms, what goes into the main header tag on your landing page?
That's where the formulas come in.
Right, the text doesn't just say write something good. It provides several proven fill-in-the-blank headline formulas that have generated millions of dollars and have worked for decades across every industry imaginable. I want to walk through the underlying mechanics of a few of these because they are absolute gold.
Let's do it.
The first formula is the how blank made me blank structure. The classic example provided is how a fool stunt made me a star salesman.
This specific formula is a powerhouse because it fundamentally introduces a narrative. Human beings are biologically, evolutionarily hardwired for story. Before we had written language, we survived by passing down knowledge through stories around a fire. When the brain detects a story starting, it instinctively leans in.
We want to know what happens next.
But it also combines the narrative with two other elements: curiosity and desire. What in the world is the fool stunt? That's the curiosity gap. The brain hates an open loop. It wants to know the secret. And it pairs that gap with a highly desirable outcome: becoming a star salesman.
Yeah.
You are promising the reader that if they satisfy their curiosity, they will learn the secret to achieving their desire.
I love the mechanics of that. Okay, here's the second formula, which is perhaps one of the most famous in advertising history. Thousands now blank even though they blink. The legendary example used to sell mail-order piano lessons was, thousands now play even though they have clumsy fingers.
That headline is just a masterclass in psychological judo. It leverages two incredibly powerful triggers simultaneously.
What's the third one?
First, it deploys immense social proof right out of the gate with the words, thousands now. Humans are tribal creatures. We look to the behavior of the tribe to determine what is safe. If thousands of other people are doing this, it severely lowers the perceived risk.
If everyone else is doing it, it must be okay.
Second, and more importantly, it anticipates and obliterates the prospect's core objection before they can even fully articulate it. When someone reads an ad for piano lessons, their immediate internal monologue is, "I'd love to play, but I don't have musical talent, my hands are too small, I have clumsy fingers."
Yeah, the self-doubt creeps in.
The headline intercepts that exact thought and says, "We already know you think that, and it doesn't matter. Thousands of people with your exact flaw are succeeding." It dismantles the defense mechanism instantly.
It beats the objection to the punch. Okay, let's look at one more formula. Warning, blank. For example, a business-to-business pitch might use, warning, 2/3 of the middle managers in your industry will lose their jobs in the next 36 months.
As the text rightly notes, the word warning is practically radioactive. It is an incredibly powerful, attention-monopolizing word.
Because it scares us.
It ties directly into the psychological principle of loss aversion. Study after study in behavioral economics has proven that human beings are psychologically much more motivated to avoid losing something they already have than they are to gain something of equal value. The pain of losing $100 is far more intense than the joy of finding
Oh,
$100.
that makes sense.
When a headline starts with warning, it triggers the amygdala. It signals a threat. It demands that you read further, not to gain a benefit, but simply to protect yourself and maintain your current status quo.
Now, alongside these formulas, the text introduces what it calls advanced strategy number 3, which is a concept known as flagging.
Flagging is a brilliant refinement. It is essentially the act of sticking a very specific audience call-out or a specific problem call-out right on the front of the headline. You are unequivocally telegraphing exactly who the message is built for.
So if I'm selling a dental product, instead of just using a generic headline that says 28 days to healthier gums, I would flag it by adding the audience. Seniors, 28 days to healthier gums. Or I can flag that specific symptom, foot pain. Corn's gone in 5 days or your money back.
Exactly. Think about the psychological phenomenon known as the cocktail party effect. You can be in a loud, crowded room with dozens of conversations happening, and it all sounds like white noise. But if someone across the room says your name or mentions your hometown, your brain instantly filters out the noise and focuses on that specific audio stream.
Your ears perk up.
Flagging does the same thing visually. When a senior citizen who has been suffering from foot pain is scanning a page of advertisements, their eyes will glaze over 100 generic headlines. But the moment they see the words foot pain, their brain flags it. They instantly know, this is for me, this applies to my life. It cuts through the cognitive clutter by personalizing the relevance instantly.
Okay, I am listening to all of this, and I have an analogy forming in my head, but I also have a major concern about the application of this.
I'm intrigued. What's the concern?
Well, looking at all these fill-in-the-blank templates, it reminds me vividly of when I tried to learn how to play the guitar. When you first start taking lessons, the very first thing they teach you is the 12-bar blues progression. It is a standard, rigid mathematical formula. Thousands upon thousands of songs use that exact same chord progression.
Right, it's foundational.
But my concern is this. If I am a copywriter or a business owner writing my own emails, doesn't plugging my product into a formula like how blank made me blank make the writing feel robotic? If every marketer reads this book and uses these templates, won't the market become completely saturated with identical sounding pitches? Doesn't the marketing just become unoriginal, boring, and ultimately ineffective?
It is a fantastic analysis, and the answer to your concern is no, for the exact same reason that the history of music hasn't been ruined by the 12-bar blues.
Okay, walk me through that.
Think about it. Muddy Waters used the 12-bar blues. Chuck Berry used it. Led Zeppelin used it. The Beatles used it. They all use the exact same underlying mathematical structure, but Johnny B. Good does not sound anything like Rock and Roll by Zeppelin.
That's true. They feel completely different.
Why? Because the structure is not the song. The structure is just the vehicle. The same is true for these headline formulas. You have to remember that human psychology, the deep evolutionary wiring that dictates what we desire, what we fear, and how we process information, does not change. The things that make us curious today are the same things that made us curious 300 years ago.
So the formulas are just tapping into that wiring.
Exactly. These formulas are not robotic scripts. They are simply the most efficient, time-tested structural vehicles for delivering those fundamental human desires.
So the progression is just the vehicle. I still have to bring my own tone and flavor to it.
You still have to write your unique song. You have to take the deep understanding of your product's specific value, your customer's unique pain points, and your brand's voice, and slot them into that progression. The 12-bar blues gives you the foundation. Your specific lyrics give it soul.
I love that.
If you ignore the formulas and try to invent a completely new, abstract, clever way of getting attention from scratch, you aren't being an avant-garde genius. You are just a beginner trying to invent a new musical scale out of thin air, and you will likely just produce discordant noise that makes the audience cover their ears and walk away.
Don't try to reinvent the scale. I
Yeah.
love that framing. Being clever often just leads to the reader being confused. And in marketing, confusion always leads to a no.
Every single time.
So use these proven headline structures. Use the Johnson box to break the visual pattern, and use flags to blatantly, obviously tell the right reader that this message is custom built for their specific pain. But, and this is a massive but, that we need to address a brilliantly constructed, flawlessly flagged headline selling acne cream to a teenager on TikTok is going to fail spectacularly if you print it out and send it to a 60-year-old CEO who is buying heavy industrial machinery.
Right, without a doubt.
The environment the salmon is swimming in dictates the survival tactics.
Absolutely. The bear changes shape depending on what river you are in.
Which brings us to the fourth major exploration, tailoring the tactics to the target audience. The source material makes it abundantly clear that the rules of engagement shift dramatically depending on exactly who is holding the letter. What works on a mom at home will bounce off the armor of a corporate executive. The text outlines specific, necessary adaptations for three distinct groups: executives, consumers, and professional services.
Let's break those down.
Let's dive into the first group, executives and business owners. When we talk about swimming upstream to reach a CEO, what is the defining environmental characteristic of marketing to this group?
It is the presence of the rapids. And in this metaphor, the rapids are the gatekeepers.
The executive assistants.
Right. When you market to a CEO, you are rarely handing the mail directly to them. You are handing it to a highly trained, highly protective executive assistant, and you have to understand the psychology of the gatekeeper. Their entire job description, the metric by which they are evaluated, includes keeping annoying, time-wasting salespeople away from their boss's desk. Their default setting is to throw your mail in the B pile.
They are the ultimate filter.
Exactly. Therefore, the standard rules of sneak-up envelopes often fail here because EAs are trained to open everything, screen it, and discard the pitches.
So how do you get past them?
To illustrate how to beat this, the text mentions one of the most brilliant, outside-the-box business-to-business campaigns ever executed. A company was trying to sell a financial service to high-level CEOs who were notoriously impossible to reach. Letters failed, calls failed, so they changed the physical format entirely.
What do they do?
They sent a sales letter, but they didn't put it in a plain envelope. They mailed it inside a small box, and inside that box was a miniature, physical, aluminum trash can.
A literal 3D object in the mail. I can only imagine the shipping costs.
Yes, but wait until you hear the payoff. Inside this little aluminum trash can was a small bag of actual peanuts.
Wait, what? Peanuts?
Real peanuts. And tucked in with the peanuts was the sales letter. The letter was written as if it were from a squirrel. The core message of the copy was aggressively accusing the executive of being nuts for throwing their company's money away by not utilizing this specific financial service.
That is absolutely hilarious, but more importantly, it fundamentally breaks the pattern of corporate mail.
Totally shatters it.
If I am an executive assistant and I open a cardboard box and a literal miniature trash can full of peanuts falls out onto my desk, I am not throwing that in the recycling bin. I am physically walking that object into the boss's office and putting it on the mahogany desk because I want to know what the punchline is just as much as the boss will.
Exactly. It bypassed the gatekeeper completely by weaponizing curiosity. It was so unusual, so disruptive to the mundane flow of corporate paperwork that the gatekeeper became a delivery mechanism rather than a barrier.
That is so clever.
Now, let's pivot and look at the second group. Everyday consumers. The rules here shift completely. Consumers are opening their own mail. They don't usually have gatekeepers, but they have a different enemy waiting in the river. They have the fishermen.
The fishermen of deep ingrained skepticism.
Precisely. Consumers have been burned. They have bought products that didn't work. They have been let down by infomercials. Their default stance is, you are lying to me to get my money.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Because of this, the text is incredibly rigid about the rules for consumer marketing. It dictates that testimonials are not optional, they are mandatory. You cannot effectively sell to a consumer without showing them other happy consumers who look and sound just like them.
Social proof again.
Yes. It also dictates a fascinating rule about imagery. Photographs significantly mathematically outperform drawings or illustrations. And crucially, you must visually prove that the product is easy to use through step-by-step demonstration.
Let's dig into the why behind that imagery rule. Why does a photograph move the needle so much more than a really high-quality, beautiful illustration?
It goes back to how the brain processes reality versus abstraction, especially in a high-trust scenario. When a consumer looks at an illustration or a drawing of a product working perfectly, their brain categorizes it as idealized. They know an artist drew it to look perfect. It isn't reality, it's a concept. Therefore, it does nothing to lower their skepticism.
Like just a fantasy.
But when they look at a photograph, even a slightly grainy, imperfect photograph, the brain codes it as reality. A photograph is evidence that the product actually exists in the real world and that a real human being used it. It provides visual proof that bypasses the skeptical filter. If they can't visualize themselves easily using the product and getting the promised result, the anxiety of making a bad purchase will override their desire and they won't buy.
That makes perfect sense. Visual proof acts as the antidote to consumer anxiety. Which brings us to the third group, professional services. We are talking about doctors, lawyers, accountants, high-level consultants, financial advisors.
This is perhaps the trickiest category because the text argues that when marketing professional services, believability actually trumps basic credibility.
What is the distinction there? Those sound like synonyms to most people.
They are related, sure, but in marketing, they function differently. Credibility is your baseline resume. It's listing your Ivy League degrees, pointing out that you've been in business for 20 years, or framing your state licenses on the wall. Credibility is expected. If you are a lawyer, I expect you to have passed the bar. That doesn't convince me to hire you over the lawyer across the street who also passed the bar.
Right, everyone has that.
Believability, on the other hand, is the active process of proving that you can actually solve the specific, unique problem the prospect is currently facing.
How do you show that?
Because professional services are inherently intangible, I can't hold a legal consultation in my hand. I can't test drive financial advice. The perceived risk of making a bad choice is astronomical. Therefore, you must offer tangible proof to anchor the intangible service.
Like case studies.
Exactly. This means providing incredibly detailed case studies that mirror the prospect's situation. It means telling slice-of-life stories of clients you've rescued. If you are an orthodontist, it means before and after photos. Or, most powerfully, it means offering a free initial consultation, an audit, or a comprehensive package of educational literature to completely lower the barrier of entry. You have to demonstrate the value of your mind before asking for the commitment of their wallet.
Okay, I'm tracking with all of this, but I have to stop you here.
Okay, what's up?
I'm connecting some dots in my head, and I think I found a massive contradiction in the rules we've discussed today. Let's look back at the peanut trash can sent to the executives.
Okay, the squirrel letter.
Right. Wait a minute. You spent 10 minutes earlier breaking down exactly why the exploding grizzly bear letter was a catastrophic failure. You said that cheap gimmicks destroy credibility, they breed resentment, and they ruin the transition from attention to interest.
I did say that.
But then you tell me that the ultimate strategy to reach a CEO is to send a miniature aluminum trash can full of peanuts pretending to be a squirrel. How is that not a massive, ridiculous gimmick? By your own logic, shouldn't the CEO open that, roll his eyes at the squirrel joke, and throw it in the real trash?
Haha, it is a fantastic observation, and catching that apparent contradiction highlights a very nuanced but absolutely critical difference in copywriting strategy.
Okay, defend the squirrel.
Let's dissect it. Why did the bear fail and the squirrel succeed? Think about the grizzly bear warning. The threat of an exploding chemical bear had absolutely fundamentally nothing to do with whatever actual product was being sold inside that letter. It was a pure bait and switch. You opened the envelope expecting physical danger, and instead you found a boring pitch for life insurance or office supplies.
It was a total lie.
The gimmick was disconnected from the value. You felt tricked, so you resented the sender. Now, look at the peanut trash can. Was it highly theatrical? Yes. Was it disruptive? Absolutely. But it was not a bait and switch. The trash can and the peanuts were a direct, physical, tactile metaphor for the core sales argument of the campaign itself.
You are throwing your money in the trash by paying too much, which means you are nuts.
Exactly. The gimmick was deeply, intrinsically tied to the value proposition. It dramatized the core benefit in a way that words alone couldn't achieve. It wasn't tricking them into reading. It was a highly creative, highly relevant physical demonstration of the exact financial problem the sender was offering to solve.
That is brilliant.
The theatrics must always reinforce the core message, never distract from it. If the gimmick doesn't seamlessly transition into the pitch, it's just a clown in the living room.
That is a profound distinction. The bear was a distraction. The trash can was a demonstration. So the architecture of your campaign really boils down to identifying the primary environmental barrier of your specific audience. Are you fighting the rapids of a gatekeeper? You need curiosity and disruption like the trash can. Are you fighting the fishermen of consumer skepticism? You need the undeniable proof of a photograph. Are you fighting the intangibility of a professional service? You need detailed case studies to build believability.
Nailed it.
Once you identify the specific obstacle, you tailor your physical delivery and your proof elements to defeat it. But what if the skepticism is so thick and the resistance to being sold to is so high that no amount of photos or case studies will work? Sometimes the armor is just too thick for a frontal assault.
Which is when you have to change the battlefield entirely. If they won't read an ad, you don't send them an ad.
Which brings us to our fifth and final concept, the power of disguise. We are talking about the psychology behind advertorials and tier sheets. This is fascinating behavioral psychology. The core concept here is taking a highly persuasive sales letter and meticulously making it masquerade as editorial content, objective news, or educational material.
Because as a general sweeping rule of human behavior, people are naturally much more inclined to read an article than they are to read an advertisement.
Obviously, yeah.
We are socially conditioned to put our guard up the moment we recognize an ad. The brain deploys a filter. This person wants my money, therefore they are biased, therefore I must be critical of every claim.
We become instantly defensive.
But when we sit down to read an article, a news story, or an educational guide, that defensive filter drops. We lower our guard because we assume the intent of the writer is to inform, not to extract. The advertorial leverages that dropped guard to deliver the sales message.
Like those old magazine ads.
Exactly. To trace this historically, this is why magazines for decades were filled with pages that looked exactly like the surrounding articles, same font, same column width, same photography style, but had the tiny word advertisement printed at the very top. The brain processes the layout as safe editorial content before the conscious mind can recognize it as a pitch.
And the source text takes this concept of disguise to its absolute physical extreme by describing an incredibly effective direct mail method called the tier sheet.
The tier sheet is legendary.
Imagine checking your physical mailbox.
Yeah.
Pull out a plain white envelope, you open it, and inside there is no brochure, there's no letterhead. Instead, there is a piece of paper that looks, feels, and even smells exactly like newsprint. It has the thin, fragile texture of a newspaper. And crucially, it has jagged edges on the sides, as if someone physically grabbed a newspaper, found an article, and violently ripped it out.
The physical, tactile experience of the jagged edge and the cheap paper reinforces the disguise in a way that visual design alone cannot. The fingers tell the brain, this is a torn article, not a printed flyer.
Exactly. And the article itself happens to be a story about a problem you are currently facing, subtly positioning a specific product as the ultimate solution. But what really sells the illusion, the absolute chef's kiss of this strategy, is that stuck to the top of this ripped newspaper article is a little yellow Post-it style sticky note. And on that sticky note, written in what looks exactly like actual blue pen handwriting, is a short, cryptic message. Thought you'd want to see this too, Jay.
It is a brilliantly constructed piece of psychological theater. Let's look at why it works. Almost every human being on the planet knows someone with a name, starting with the letter J, John, Jessica, Jim, Jason.
Yeah, my brother is a Jason.
Right. So when you pull this out, your immediate subconscious assumption is that a friend, a neighbor, or a coworker was reading the Sunday paper, saw an article that reminded them of your specific problem, physically ripped it out, slapped a sticky note on it, and mailed it to you to be helpful.
The text breaks down the staggering, almost unbelievable math behind why marketers go through all this trouble to create this theater. Let's say you send a normal, obvious sales letter on corporate stationery. Because of the B-pile sorting and the natural resistance to ads, you might get a 10% readership rate. 10 out of 100 people actually read the letter.
Right.
But because of the overwhelming curiosity generated by the disguise, the tactile feel of the newsprint, and the mysterious sticky note from Jay, a tier sheet mailing might achieve a 30% to 50% readership rate.
And if we do the math on the back end, the power of this strategy becomes undeniable.
Walk us through it.
Let's assume that the actual conversion rate, the percentage of people who read the pitch and decide to buy the product, remains exactly identical in both scenarios. Let's say it's 10%. If you send the normal letter to 100 people, 10 people read it. 10% of those readers buy. You get one sale.
Okay, one sale.
If you send the tier sheet to 100 people, 50 people read it because of the disguise. 10% of those 50 readers buy. You get 5 sales. Without changing the product, without changing the price, without even writing better core sales copy, you have just quintupled your revenue solely by changing the format and the physical delivery mechanism to bypass the reader's defense filters.
It is mathematically undeniable. But I have to bring up the massive risk factor here, which echoes my concern about the sneak-up envelope. If I receive this torn newspaper clipping, I am 100% assuming it's my buddy Jason. I sit down at the kitchen table, I let my guard down, and I start reading it. At some point, usually toward the bottom when it asks me to call an 800 number, the illusion is going to shatter. I am going to realize this isn't an objective journalist writing about a solution. It's a meticulously crafted advertisement from a company playing dress up.
The jig is up.
Right. When that realization hits, doesn't the sheer manipulation of the tactic backfire? Doesn't the customer feel foolish for being tricked by a fake sticky note? And doesn't that embarrassment turn into anger against the brand?
It is the most vital question to ask when employing these tactics. The masquerade buys you unprecedented attention, but it is absolutely a high-wire act with no safety net.
Because if you fall.
If the article they read turns out to be purely self-serving, shallow fluff, if it just brags about how great your company is, or if it reads like a dry, boring spec sheet, they will absolutely be furious. You manipulated their trust, and more importantly, you wasted their time. They will burn the letter and blacklist your company in their mind.
So how do you avoid that?
Human psychology allows for forgiveness if a specific condition is met. If that disguised article actually educates them, if it provides real, actionable value, if it clearly and empathetically helps them understand the root cause of their own problems better than they did before they sat down. The psychology of the interaction shifts.
So it has to be useful.
Yes. People will generally forgive the theatrical delivery mechanism. They might roll their eyes at the fake sticky note from Jay because they ultimately benefited from the read. The value of the information justifies the deception of the entry.
It all comes back to the fire. If I kick down your door in a ski mask, you're going to shoot me. If I kick down your door in a ski mask to pull you out of a burning building, you're going to hug me. The content must deliver salvation.
That is the perfect analogy.
It makes you fundamentally reconsider the format of your own marketing. Does your outreach have to look like a traditional, boring ad? Could you deliver your pitch in the format of an educational guide, an editorial article, a white paper, or a documentary-style video? By shifting the format from pitch to education, you can dramatically increase the number of people who actually lower their shields and start reading.
If we synthesize everything we've unpacked today, from the wastebasket to the sticky notes, the underlying insight, the true soul of these chapters is accepting a very humbling reality. The reader's attention is never, ever owed to you. You have to view human attention as a fortified castle. It is fiercely protected. It has physical gatekeepers, the literal wastebasket, the aggressive executive assistant, the spam filter, and it has deeply ingrained psychological guards, boredom, consumer skepticism, and the overwhelming fatigue of information overload. You cannot casually stroll up to this fortress, knock on the drawbridge, and expect them to open the gates just because you believe you have a high-quality product.
They will just shoot arrows at you from the wall. You have to systematically conquer the fortress.
Exactly. You conquer it sequentially. First, you survive the physical sorting process with smart, intentional packaging, whether that's slipping past the guards in a sneak-up envelope or arriving with the undeniable authority of a FedEx package. And then the millisecond you are inside the walls, you must instantly prove that you are a welcomed guest, not a marauding pest.
By putting out the fire.
You achieve that by bearing urgent, highly relevant value. You use proven headline structures and visual disruptions to force their eyes open, and you deliver information that addresses the fire burning in their specific world.
Which brings us to the horizon and the next stage of our journey. Because let's assume we execute everything perfectly. We survive the wastebasket, we bypass the gatekeepers, we force their eyes open with a killer flagged headline, we compel them to read our entire message by wrapping it in an educational advertorial. We have successfully poured water on their fire.
We did everything right.
We have brought them right to the edge of the cliff of purchasing. But then we face the final boss. We have to overcome the ultimate paralyzing thought that every single customer has right before they pull out their credit card or sign the contract. I really want this, but do I want it that much?
Oh, buyer's hesitation.
How do we push them over that final edge of hesitation? Well, that is a deep dive for another day. For now, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on as you go about your day. Before you sit down to write your next email campaign, before you hand out your next brochure, or format your next pitch deck, take a moment today to look closely at your own behavior. Look inside your literal trash can under your desk. Open up the deleted items folder on your phone. Look at the junk mail you aggressively tossed out this morning without a second thought.
Really analyze it.
What are the common traits of the things you just threw away? What do the subject lines look like? What fonts did they use? How did they fail to identify your fire? And more importantly, if you look at your own business objectively, are you inadvertently copying those exact same traits?
What if you spent weeks, I mean literally weeks, crafting the absolute perfect pitch, the ultimate product, or this brilliant proposal only to realize the person you sent it to just threw it in the trash in like 60 seconds without reading a single word?
Yeah, it is a brutal reality check, but it's one that, honestly, every single person in business eventually has to face.
Right.
Because the simple, unvarnished truth is that the best sales material in the world, the most innovative product, or the most meticulously researched argument,
Hmm.
it is all completely and utterly worthless if it lands in the hands of the willfully blind.
Wow. Willfully blind, that's a good way to put it.
Right, because you can have the cure for a major disease, but if the person you're handing it to just refuses to even open the envelope, I mean, that cure means absolutely nothing.
It means nothing.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that profound disconnect is exactly what we are tackling today. We're setting the stakes incredibly high right out of the gate here because this deep dive is entirely focused on breaking through that exact type of willful blindness.
Yeah, it's so foundational.
It really is. So we are jumping into a fascinating section of our source material today. We're specifically exploring the concepts laid out in the chapters Eyes Wide Shut, and then that transition into I want it, but not that much.
Mm-hmm. Two incredible sections.
They really are. So in this deep dive, you are going to learn exactly how to transform yourself from basically an annoying pest into a highly welcome guest in the eyes of your prospect.
Which is such a massive shift.
Oh, huge.
Right.
We'll show you how to command attention, force your reader to actually engage with your message, and then, and this is the crucial part, right, stack the perceived value of your offer so high that they literally can't help but want it.
Yeah, we are looking at the foundational architecture of human attention and desire here.
For sure. Why is this so important for, our listeners to grasp?
Well, for anyone interested in business, entrepreneurship, or honestly, even just getting your ideas heard in this increasingly noisy world, this is a masterclass in human psychology. Because if you cannot get your prospects' eyes wide open, and if you can't build an undeniable, just burning desire for what you have, the objective quality of your product simply does not matter.
It just doesn't.
Right. The market doesn't reward the best product. It rewards the product that commands the most attention and articulates its value the most effectively.
That is so true.
In the material we are examining today, it lays out this very systematic, highly mechanical approach to bypassing those natural defense mechanisms that, every single human being carries around with them.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I feel like we really have to start by dismantling what the source material calls the myth of the waiting reader.
Oh, this is such a good concept.
Right. Because I think we all carry around this innocent, almost painfully naive assumption, when we hit send on an email campaign or we drop a physical letter in the mail.
Or even launch a website.
Exactly. We have this internal narrative that basically says, well, I worked really hard on this and I sent it, so of course they're going to set aside time to read it.
Yeah, that classic, if you build it, they will come mentality.
Yes. It's deeply flawed. The research just explicitly shatters this illusion. It points out a very uncomfortable truth for all of us. You are not a highly anticipated event in anyone's day.
No, you are not.
You are an interruption.
That is the perfect word for it. You are an interruption. You are essentially an uninvited guest crashing their mental party.
Right.
And to understand why acknowledging this is just so critical, we need to look at the underlying mechanics of persuasion here. I mean, we're all familiar with the classic AIDA formula, right?
Right. Attention, interest, desire, action.
Exactly. It is the bedrock sequence of literally any successful transaction or persuasive argument. But where almost everyone fails, and I mean everyone, is at the very first hurdle.
Just getting the attention.
Just getting it. They fail to capture attention entirely. And what's fascinating here is that human beings don't just, passively ignore marketing or pitches.
No, they actively fight it.
Right. We actively, aggressively look for reasons to filter them out. Our brains are essentially these highly tuned spam filters.
Because if they weren't, we would completely short circuit.
Oh, absolutely.
The modern cognitive load is just absolutely maxed out. We are constantly looking for the quickest possible way to clear our desks, clear our inboxes, clear our mental bandwidth. Like when an email pops up, the subconscious question isn't, oh, what is this interesting opportunity? The question is, how quickly can I delete this so I can just get back to what I was already doing?
Exactly that. The default action is disposal.
Disposal. Yeah,
because we are wired for cognitive conservation. Processing a new pitch requires energy, and unless there is an immediate, super obvious payoff, the brain's gatekeeper just says, no, thank you.
Right.
So getting someone's attention, it isn't about politely clearing your throat and hoping they look your way. It is about fundamentally and almost violently shifting your status in their mind from a nuisance to a necessity. You have to break the pattern.
Which brings up, honestly, the most incredible cinematic story from the material we're looking at today.
Oh, the burning bush.
I
Yes.
love this story so much because it perfectly illustrates that pest to guest transformation, like in real time.
It's brilliant.
So the author recounts this specific afternoon. He is at home, sitting at his kitchen counter with an iced tea, and he is deep into this telephone call with a highly lucrative, incredibly important client in another city.
Right, so he is dialed in.
Totally dialed in. This is a high-stakes moment for him. And suddenly, the front doorbell rings.
Which he obviously ignored.
Right, he ignores it,
Yep.
but it rings again, just relentlessly. He keeps ignoring it, trying to focus on this huge client. Then this uninvited pest starts pounding on the heavy wooden front door.
Like actually pounding.
Yes, and the author is deeply annoyed, thinking, who on earth is doing this? But he tries to keep talking, trying to maintain his professional composure on the phone.
Right. And this is the quintessential anatomy of an interruption. The author is deeply engaged in an activity that holds massive value to him, securing his livelihood with this client. And this outside, completely unknown force is aggressively demanding his attention without having earned even a fraction of it.
Exactly.
So the outsider is a pure liability in that moment.
And the situation actually escalates.
It gets worse.
Yeah, the author won't go to the front door, so suddenly this guy runs around the side of the house and starts violently banging on the sliding glass door right behind where the author is sitting.
Just unbelievable.
At this point, the author is furious. I mean, he refuses to even turn around. It basically becomes this stubborn contest of wills. He is not going to let this stranger win.
No way.
But finally, the guy realizes the glass door isn't working, so he runs back around to the front door and starts pounding on it all over again.
Wow.
So the author finally reaches his breaking point. He excuses himself from this vital client call, puts the phone down, and just marches to the front door, fully intending to just obliterate this incredibly annoying person verbally.
Which makes total sense.
Right. He throws open the door, and the guy who turns out to just be this random passing motorist is totally out of breath and yells that the massive row of shrubs along the author's backyard wall is fully engulfed in flames.
And in that fraction of a second, the entire psychological landscape just flips upside down.
Instantly. I mean, the author realizes this erratic, banging stranger is trying to tell him that his property, his actual home, is quite literally on fire.
Yeah.
Instantly, this massive pest, this ultimate nuisance, is elevated to the status of a profoundly welcome, highly valued guest.
They're suddenly completely aligned.
Exactly. They're on the same team. The author doesn't yell at him. He says, "Get the garden hose going, I'll call the fire department." And they work side by side to keep the burning shrubbery from setting the entire house ablaze.
We really need to pause and analyze the core psychological shift that occurred on that porch right there.
Yeah, how did that happen?
How did that motorist go from being a despised, rage-inducing pest to a highly valued ally in literally the blink of an eye? Notice what didn't happen. The motorist didn't change his tone of voice to be more polite.
Right, he was still yelling.
Exactly. He didn't use a clever opening joke. He didn't present a slick, well-designed business card.
No.
The transformation occurred entirely because he had something to say that the author instantly, viscerally recognized as being of urgent importance, of critical value, and of massive benefit to him.
Right, to the author. The message had absolutely nothing to do with the motorist's needs.
Nothing at all.
Like, the motorist didn't say, "Excuse me, sir, I'm trying to meet my daily quota of warning people about fires in the neighborhood."
Right.
The message was entirely centered on the author's survival, his property, his immediate burning reality.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture for anyone trying to communicate a message today,
Yeah.
the practical takeaway here is profound and honestly completely non-negotiable. To earn a welcome, when you reach out to a prospect, and this could be a cold sales letter, an email sequence, a venture capital pitch, or literally even just a presentation to your boss, your message must immediately say something that the recipient recognizes as urgently important to their world.
Their world, not your world.
Exactly. Not yours, theirs. If you start by talking about how great your company is or, how long you've been in business, You are just the guy banging on the glass door while they try to work.
Yeah.
You are a pest.
Let me throw an analogy at this just to see how it holds up in a more modern digital context.
Sure, let's hear it.
Think about how we all operate today. You can comfortably and honestly mindlessly ignore a dozen promotional emails in your inbox while just waiting in line for coffee, right?
Oh, easily. Swipe, delete, swipe, delete.
Exactly. You don't even process the subject lines fully.
Yeah.
But if your phone buzzes and you get a text message from an unknown number that simply says, "Hey, I think your car is about to be towed from the corner of 5th and Main," you open it immediately.
Oh, yeah. Heart rate spikes.
Your pupils dilate. You are entirely engaged. You don't care that you don't know the sender. You care about the car.
Yes.
But here's the major challenge I see when applying this to business, and I'd love your take on this. How do we simulate that fire or that tow truck scenario without destroying our own credibility?
That is the big question.
Right, because you can't just send an email with the subject line, "Your office is on fire," if you're just trying to sell, like, accounting software.
No, definitely not.
How do we create that visceral urgency without resorting to outright lies that will just inevitably ruin our brand reputation?
Well, that is the million-dollar question. And it is exactly where amateur marketers fail while the professionals succeed.
Okay.
You are entirely correct that you cannot manufacture a literal, physical fire. Doing so is not only deceitful, but it guarantees that the moment the prospect realizes there is no fire, any potential trust is permanently incinerated.
Right, they'll hate you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
However, you must identify the metaphorical fire that is already burning in your prospect's life.
Okay, the metaphorical fire.
Yes. What is their urgent bleeding neck problem? What is the specific anxiety that jolts them awake at 3:30 a.m.?
Right.
If your accounting software solves a genuine problem, let's say the catastrophic risk of a tax audit that could bankrupt their small business, your job is to articulate the threat of that audit so clearly and with such stark reality that it triggers the exact same neurological response as the guy pointing at the burning shrubs.
Wow. Okay, so you aren't lying about a fire.
No, you are shining a massive spotlight on a highly dangerous vulnerability they are currently ignoring.
That makes total sense.
You have to prove in the very first seconds of interaction that engaging with your message is directly tied to their immediate financial or professional survival.
So it's really about achieving extreme, unavoidable relevance. You are basically holding up a mirror to their biggest fear or their most desperate desire.
Yes. And this absolute necessity for immediate, urgent relevance, it leads us directly into the mechanical execution of how we actually format our messages.
Right, the actual layout.
Because here is the catch. Before they can even read your brilliant, perfectly crafted opening paragraph that outlines their metaphorical fire, you have to get their eyes to physically stop scanning and commit to reading.
Yeah.
You have to bypass the visual spam filter.
Which brings us to the visual architecture of the page itself.
Yes.
And this part of the source material is so fascinating to me because it treats reading not as this intellectual exercise, but almost as a biological habit that needs to be hacked.
That's a great way to frame it.
It explores how to bypass the reader's blind spot before their conscious brain can even decide to bail on the document. And it highlights two major structural tools to achieve this: the Johnson box and these highly proven, psychologically engineered headline structures.
Let's examine the Johnson box first, because it really is a brilliant piece of visual disruption.
Yeah, walk us through it.
Imagine a traditional formal business letter. You have the standard corporate letterhead, the date, the recipient's name and address block on the left, and then the formal salutation, "Dear Mr. Smith."
Right, very standard.
The Johnson box is a specific message placed at the very top of the letter, hovering above everything else. It's often literally enclosed inside a drawn rectangular box or framed by a border of asterisks.
It functions exactly like a billboard sitting on the roof of your letterhead.
That is the perfect way to visualize it. A billboard on the roof. It telegraphs the single most critical benefit, or the most urgent leading neck warning, before the reader's defense mechanisms can fully boot up.
Right.
Because when a human being opens a letter or a document, their eyes naturally and rapidly dart around to assess the geography of the page, right? They're trying to categorize what it is.
Basically asking, is this junk?
Exactly. The Johnson box intercepts that subconscious visual scan. It acts as a speed bump for the eyes, delivering this concentrated, inescapable dose of value. It answers the prospect's most pressing subconscious question, "Why should I care about this?" before they ever reach the word "dear."
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The structure of the box is one thing, but the actual words you put inside that box, or what serves as the headline for your message, that is where the real psychological warfare happens.
Oh, absolutely.
The material provides a series of highly tested, fill-in-the-blank headline structures that have generated literally millions of dollars over decades.
Decades of testing.
Right. And the psychology embedded behind these formulas is incredible. I want us to really dive into some of them because they reveal so much about human nature, insecurities, and desires.
We absolutely should, because the author's primary advice to you as a communicator is to stop trying to reinvent the wheel.
Just stop.
Stop trying to be purely creative or clever or cute.
Yeah.
Cute doesn't convert.
No, it doesn't.
These mechanical structures are not guesses. They have been ruthlessly tested and optimized for decades in the real world. They are precision engineered to bypass the psychological barriers of the modern consumer. Your job isn't to write a new formula. Your job is to take the specific, unique benefits of your business and plug them directly into these proven templates.
Okay, let's look at the first classic example from the text. They laughed when blank, but their laughter changed to amazement when blank.
Classic.
The most famous historical example of this is the old piano lesson ad, right? They laughed when I sat down at the piano, but when I started to play.
Right, John Caples.
Exactly. Why does this specific narrative structure work so consistently well across completely different industries? It feels like it bypasses logic entirely and plays directly on our deepest, most primal fears and desires.
Because it does bypass logic entirely. This headline formula is a masterpiece of emotional resonance.
Yeah.
It taps directly into the universal, deeply rooted fear of public embarrassment. And it marries it to the desperate, intoxicating human desire for vindication and social triumph.
Oh, wow. Vindication.
Think about it. Every single person on Earth has felt underestimated, mocked, or doubted at some point in their life. We all carry the scars of social rejection.
Definitely.
So when a reader sees this headline, they don't just read words. They instantly project their own internal desire for revenge and mastery onto the scenario being presented.
They see themselves.
Exactly. It promises a rapid, undeniable transformation from being the ridiculed underdog to being the celebrated hero of the room. It condenses an incredibly powerful mythic narrative arc into a single, highly readable sentence.
It doesn't promise that your product will teach them a skill. It promises that your product is the secret weapon that will finally force their peers to respect them.
Exactly.
That is a massive distinction. People don't want piano lessons. They want the applause. I love that.
That's the real product.
Okay, what about this one, which is much shorter but feels incredibly punchy? Who else wants blank, for example? Who else wants a Hollywood A-lister's figure? Or who else wants to cut their accounting fees in half? It is so brief, but it feels so magnetic.
The genius of the Who Else Wants framework lies in its incredibly subtle manipulation of social proof and FOMO, the fear of missing out.
Right.
By starting the question with, who else? It fundamentally shifts the premise of the pitch. It strongly implicitly assumes that there is already an exclusive, intelligent group of people who are currently enjoying this amazing benefit.
Right.
It implies that a highly valuable secret is already being shared and utilized, and you, the reader, are currently standing on the outside looking in.
It's exactly like walking down a city street and seeing a restaurant with a massive line wrapping around the block.
Yes.
You don't even know what kind of food they serve, but your brain immediately thinks, what do they know that I don't? I need to get in that line.
Precisely. It weaponizes our herd mentality. It effectively bypasses the reader's initial skepticism because it frames the benefit not as this unproven, risky claim that you are desperately trying to push on them, but as an established historical fact that others are already benefiting from.
You're just offering them a chance to join the winning team.
Exactly. You're just letting them in on the secret.
Then there's a variation that builds even more overt social proof, addressing the skeptic head on. The plural version. Thousands now blank, even though they blank.
A very powerful structure.
The classic example given is, thousands now play the piano even though they have clumsy fingers. Or maybe in B2B, it would be thousands of agencies now double their output even though they have zero coding experience.
This specific formula is a brilliant dual-action psychological trigger.
How so?
First, it uses the sheer undeniable weight of numbers, thousands, tens of thousands, millions, to establish absolute unshakable credibility. The human brain is wired to believe that if thousands of other people are doing something, it must be generally safe and effective.
Right, the ultimate safety in numbers.
Exactly. But the real structural magic happens in the second half of the sentence, even though this is where you proactively address and assassinate the reader's primary objection or deepest insecurity before they can even fully articulate it themselves.
Because the moment someone reads a promise, their brain immediately supplies an excuse, right?
Always.
I'd love to learn the piano, but my fingers are way too clumsy. It won't work for me. And then, boom, the headline anticipates that exact thought and says, yeah, thousands of people with incredibly clumsy fingers are already doing it successfully.
It completely disarms their internal defense mechanism.
That is so smart.
It creates a profound sense of relief. The internal dialogue shifts from, I can't do this because of my flaw, to, if they can achieve this result despite having the exact same massive flaw that I have, then I can definitely do this too. It entirely removes the psychological barrier to entry.
And finally, we have to talk about one of the simplest but most viscerally potent triggers in the English language. The word warning, followed by a specific, highly relevant problem or consequence.
Oh, this one is intense.
For example, warning. 2/3 of the middle managers in your specific industry will be replaced by AI in the next 36 months.
This leans entirely on the principle of loss aversion.
Loss aversion, right?
Decades of behavioral economics and psychological studies have proven time and time again that human beings are fundamentally wired to be far more motivated by the desire to avoid a loss than they are by the desire to acquire a similar gain.
Right.
The pain of losing $100 is psychologically much sharper than the joy of finding $100.
Oh, definitely.
So the word warning taps directly into the amygdala. It triggers an ancient, hardwired survival response. The brain perceives a threat to its resources or status and demands immediate attention.
It's like the metaphorical fire again.
Exactly. However, this comes with a massive caveat for anyone listening. If you use a warning headline to hijack their attention, the body of your message must immediately, seamlessly validate that warning with factual, highly credible information.
You can't just bait and switch.
Never. If you yell warning and then pivot into a soft, unrelated sales pitch, you will permanently destroy their trust in your brand.
So we have all these mechanical structures, the Johnson boxes, the psychologically tuned headlines to grab attention. We are successfully bypassing the blind spot.
Yes.
But the material makes a very sharp transition here that we just cannot ignore. A headline is only effective if it is surgically tailored to the specific paranoias, desires, and crucially the physical environments of the exact person reading it.
This is so important.
Right. The strategy you use to get past a CEO's gatekeeper requires a completely different universe of tactics than trying to convince a consumer sitting on their couch at home.
It is a critical, foundational distinction. If we connect this to the bigger picture of campaign strategy, you cannot simply view your prospect demographic as a disembodied pair of eyeballs floating in a void.
Right, they exist in the real world.
You have to intimately understand the physical, logistical, and psychological environment in which your message is actually being opened and consumed. The barriers to entry are wildly different depending on who you are targeting.
Let's start with the high-level B2B executive. The analysis of this highly guarded, almost militarized environment is fascinating.
It really is.
When you are targeting a CEO or a VP, you aren't just trying to persuade the executive. Your first battle is getting past the mailroom, the executive assistants, the chiefs of staff, the literal gatekeepers whose entire professional existence revolves around throwing your pitch in the trash to protect their boss's time.
Exactly. Their job is to say no.
And this dynamic leads to what has to be one of the most audacious and brilliant examples in the entire text, the legendary trash can and peanuts strategy.
It remains one of the greatest examples of physical pattern interruption and breaking through the B2B defensive shield.
So the story goes that to reach these notoriously non-responsive, highly shielded executives, a marketer didn't send a white envelope. He sent them a physical dimensional package.
A literal box.
A box. And inside this box was a miniature, realistic aluminum trash can.
Which is already weird.
Right. And inside that little trash can was a small bag of peanuts. Along with this bizarre setup, there was a letter written entirely from the perspective of a squirrel.
I love this so much.
And the squirrel's letter basically accused the high-level prospect of being completely nuts and throwing perfectly good money into the trash by ignoring the marketer's previous, highly lucrative offers.
It sounds utterly absurd on the surface, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some might even call it childish. But let's analyze exactly why this works with such surgical, psychological precision.
Yeah, break it down.
First, consider the physical logistics of delivery.
Mm-hmm.
A lumpy, dimensional box simply cannot be easily categorized as junk mail by an executive assistant.
Right, it's not a flat envelope.
Or an assistant will ruthlessly shred a flat white envelope from an unknown company, but they are far less likely to throw away a package that clearly contains a physical object. The mystery of the box guarantees it lands on the executive's desk.
Because the assistant doesn't want to throw away a gift or something important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Second, consider the sheer, overwhelming curiosity it generates in the target. When a busy executive opens a box and finds a tiny aluminum trash can full of peanuts, the cognitive dissonance is so incredibly high that their brain cannot simply move on.
They're frozen in confusion.
They literally must read the accompanying letter to resolve the confusion of why someone spent money to send them peanuts.
You cannot just toss a tiny trash can aside and go back to your spreadsheets without knowing why it arrived. The brain demands closure. It forces engagement through sheer anomaly.
And third, it utilizes humor and a massive pattern interrupt to make a very sharp, aggressive business point. You are actively wasting money by ignoring my solutions. It completely shatters the expected, boring script of a dry, jargon-filled B2B pitch. It is unforgettable.
Okay, so that perfectly illustrates the executive environment. You need 3D mail, extreme curiosity, and pattern interrupts to bypass professional gatekeepers. But what happens when we shift our focus to the consumer at home? The dynamics change completely.
Entirely. The everyday consumer at home generally does not have a paid secretary sorting their mail or managing their inbox.
Though it is worth noting that in many households, one specific person often acts as the ruthless filter, standing over the recycling bin sorting the daily mail.
Oh, absolutely, the household gatekeeper. But the primary barrier here isn't a physical gatekeeper. It is an environment of extreme skepticism, jadedness, and a profound lack of time.
Right.
Consumers have been lied to, burned by false promises, and disappointed by marketing for their entire lives. Therefore, simply making a bold claim is entirely insufficient. The environment demands an overwhelming avalanche of proof.
It's not enough to say this will make your life better. You have to immediately, undeniably back it up.
Exactly. For the consumer audience, you must deploy heavy artillery in the form of testimonials from highly relatable, happy users. Furthermore, the research stresses that actual photographs drastically outperform drawings, illustrations, or graphics.
Why is that?
Because the consumer brain categorizes a drawing as an artist's interpretation, a fiction. A photograph, even in the age of digital editing, still subconsciously represents undeniable objective reality.
Seeing is believing.
You must visually and textually prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the product does exactly what you say it does. The consumer environment is not a boardroom. It is a hostile courtroom, and you are the defense attorney. You must arrive with an overwhelming, watertight body of evidence.
And then there is a third distinct category that is heavily analyzed: professional services.
Yes, a very tricky space.
If you are a doctor, a financial advisor, a specialized attorney, or an elite consultant, the dynamic shifts yet again. The text makes a very sharp, vital differentiation here between the concepts of credibility and believability.
This is a nuanced but absolutely vital distinction for anyone in the service sector. Credibility is purely factual. It is the resume.
Right.
It's stating that you have been in business for 20 years, that you graduated from Harvard, that you have 3 advanced degrees, and that you have successfully served over 1,000 clients. Credibility is the baseline requirement. It proves you are competent. It gets you in the room.
But it doesn't close the deal.
No, it rarely closes the deal. Believability, on the other hand, is entirely emotional. Believability is achieved when a prospect reads a detailed narrative about a real-life experience another client had with you.
Oh, interesting.
It's when they read about how their specific private fears were recognized and erased, and how they tangibly, emotionally benefited from your counsel. Facts and degrees support the logical justification of the purchase, but it's emotional believability that actually drives the human being to take action and hire you.
To build that believability, you really have to focus on making the intangible tangible. If you are selling a service, say, financial peace of mind, you can't show a glossy photograph of it like you can with a sports car.
Right.
So you have to rely heavily on case histories, detailed slice-of-life stories, and vivid before and after scenarios to make the invisible value of your service entirely visible to the prospect's imagination.
Exactly. And this intense need to break through skepticism and force engagement in these specific environments leads us directly into one of the most controversial, aggressively debated tactics discussed in the source material, the infamous tear sheet and sticky note method.
Yes. Okay, I really need to pause and push back on this one because when I read this, it set off major alarm bells regarding brand preservation and trust.
I'm not surprised. It's a divisive one.
For anyone listening, the text describes this guerrilla marketing method where a marketer will format their advertisement to look exactly like a genuinely published, ripped out magazine or newspaper article, a literal tear sheet.
Right, they rough up the edges so it looks torn.
Yes. They then attach a handwritten yellow sticky note to it, usually containing a very generic familiar message like, Jay thought you should see this immediately, M.
It's brilliant.
And they mail it in a plain, unmarked white envelope. The recipient opens it, sees what looks like a genuine, objective news article highly relevant to their industry, accompanied by a note from someone they automatically assume is a friend or a helpful colleague.
It is a masterful, highly deceptive piece of psychological engineering. It entirely and completely bypasses the brain's "this is an advertisement" defense mechanism because it doesn't look or feel anything like an ad.
But wait, let's look at the long-term fallout of this. Doesn't this completely obliterate your long-term conversion rates and brand trust?
Well, that's the debate.
When I open that envelope, read the note, and then 30 seconds later realize I've been duped, that this isn't from my buddy M, but it's actually a mass-produced piece of manipulative marketing from a company trying to sell me software, doesn't that immediately breed resentment?
It absolutely can.
But is it really worth tricking a CEO into reading your first paragraph if the cost is that they instantly blacklist your company the moment they realize it's a gimmick? You might win the open rate, but don't you lose the sale and the relationship?
That is a very sophisticated objection, and it touches on the exact tension between short-term metrics and long-term brand equity.
Right.
The source material takes a very unapologetic hardline stance on this. The author operates from what he calls the "gotta break a few eggs to make an omelet" philosophy.
Oh, okay.
The underlying premise is this. Yes, you will absolutely annoy a certain percentage of people. Some prospects deeply resent feeling tricked, and they will throw it away in disgust.
I would be one of them.
Many would. However, the raw data, the historical effectiveness of the strategy, proves that the high percentage of people who will read the message, engage with the content, and ultimately respond vastly outweighs the temporary annoyance of those who reject it.
So it's a purely mathematical justification. The end justifies the means, as long as the cost of acquisition remains profitable despite the burned bridges.
It is mathematical, but with one massive, non-negotiable caveat that the text heavily emphasizes.
What's the caveat?
This tactic only works and is only viable long-term if the core offer you are presenting is hyper-targeted and genuinely, profoundly valuable to the specific recipient.
Ah, okay.
If you use this deceptive tier sheet method to trick someone into reading absolute garbage or a pitch for a product they don't need, they will hate you forever.
Right.
But if you use this tactic to get a highly relevant, deeply variable, life-saving solution into the hands of someone who genuinely, desperately needs it, the fact that you actually solved their massive problem will very quickly overshadow the irritation of how you got their attention.
That loops right back to the burning shrubbery metaphor, doesn't it?
Exactly. The passing motorist aggressively banged on the glass door like a maniac, which was highly irritating. But because he ultimately pointed out a fire and saved the house, his aggressive, disruptive tactics were immediately forgiven and celebrated.
Right. If your product is the water for their fire, they will forgive the sticky note.
That's it, exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. The value of the rescue has to exceed the annoyance of the interruption. So, tailor the physical delivery and the psychological hook to the exact barriers of your target audience. Use 3D mail for executives to physically bypass gatekeepers. Use heavy, undeniable visual proof for skeptical consumers at home. And if you use a sneak attack method like the tear sheet, you better make absolutely certain you are delivering the goods once you have their attention, or you will torch your reputation.
Precisely. You have successfully navigated the minefield. You have bypassed the physical gatekeeper. You have broken through the psychological skepticism. You have commanded their unblinking attention. They are finally actually reading your pitch.
But we aren't done.
No, we are not.
In fact, we are about to hit the biggest, thickest brick wall of all. The text points out that even if they are completely captivated by your copy, even if they recognize they have a problem, the exact moment they look at a high price tag, it can instantly kill all the momentum.
Yeah.
They look at the cost, and the internal monologue says, I really want this, but I don't want it that much.
This is the crux of the entire transaction. This is where the sale is won or lost. How do we make the prospect want the solution vastly more than they care about keeping their money.
Right.
How do we construct the perceived value so monumentally high that the actual price tag seems almost completely irrelevant in comparison?
The text appropriately titles this chapter, I Want It, but Not That Much. And it opens with this brilliant observational metaphor about ultra high-end luxury clothing stores.
Yes, the boutiques on Rodeo Drive or Fifth Avenue with absolutely no price tags in the pristine windows or on the garments themselves.
Right.
The operating philosophy in those rarefied environments is if you have to ask how much it is, you inherently cannot afford it.
Mm.
The ultra-wealthy customers in those luxury environments select what they want simply because they desire it, entirely undeterred by the cost, and they just wait for the final bill to arrive.
But for the rest of the actual world, for 99% of businesses, entrepreneurs, and consumers, price is a massive, looming, terrifying obstacle.
It's everything.
You cannot just hide the price tag and hope they're too polite to care. They care deeply.
Exactly. Therefore, you must actively, intentionally engineer a sense of overwhelming, disproportionate value. As we established earlier, people do not buy things for what they are. They buy them for what they do and how they make them feel.
Right.
But to justify a premium price, to conquer that innate price resistance, you have to artificially but honestly inflate the perceived value of what they're receiving. You cannot just list the features. You have to build an architecture of value.
So what does this all mean in practice? How do you artificially but honestly inflate value without lying? The text gives us several highly specific, actionable strategies to make an offer feel massive, and the first one they detail is the concept of selling bulk.
This taps into a very primitive heuristic. Human beings naturally and subconsciously equate physical bulk, volume, or weight with intrinsic value.
It's biological.
Yeah. The heavier an object is, the more pages a manual has, the more physical space a product takes up, the more our brains automatically perceive it to be worth.
The text mentions the classic historical example of the 5-foot shelf of books.
A legendary campaign.
The publishers weren't just selling a curated collection of classic literature, their marketing proudly proclaimed its sheer, intimidating physical size. Or consider the marketer who famously advertised that his comprehensive home study course weighs over 13 pounds and costs nearly $20 just to ship to your door.
They are literally selling the physical weight of the paper as a proxy for the intellectual value of the information.
Exactly.
It creates a visceral, undeniable sense of getting a massive amount of stuff for your hard-earned money. Now, if you are selling digital products, SaaS, or consulting services, you obviously don't have physical weight.
Right, there's no box.
So you have to find creative ways to conceptualize and communicate that bulk. How many distinct modules are in the course? How many total hours of high-definition video? How many hundreds of pages of downloadable transcripts and templates? You must take the invisible, digital value and make it feel incredibly heavy to the prospect.
And this leads perfectly into what is undoubtedly my favorite analogy in the entire source material. The apple analogy. I love this because it so perfectly illustrates the mechanics of how to unpack the hidden, massive value inside something incredibly ordinary.
It is an absolute masterpiece of linguistic deconstruction and value building.
Let's walk through it. Imagine you are tasked with writing a sales pitch for an ordinary, everyday apple.
Just a standard apple.
The lazy, standard way to sell it is to just rely on the old cliche, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. No, it's a true statement, but it's incredibly boring, and it does absolutely nothing to build any premium perceived value. You aren't going to pay a premium price for a cliche.
Right, because that lazy approach only focuses on the surface level of what the item is, rather than the totality of the microscopic benefits it contains and delivers.
But the text argues that instead of just tossing out a cliche, you must systematically deconstruct the apple. First, you list every single individual vitamin and mineral provided by the apple.
Right.
You isolate the vitamin C, the vitamin A, the potassium, the dietary fiber, the antioxidants. Then you take it a step further. You list every single physiological health benefit delivered by each of those individual nutrients.
You expand on every single one.
You explain how the vitamin C fortifies the immune system against seasonal viruses, how the potassium regulates blood pressure and protects the heart, how the fiber aids in digestion and weight management.
And then the coup de grace.
Exactly. You show the massive, expensive bulk of other foods or supplements you would have to consume to get those exact same nutrients and benefits if you didn't buy the apple.
What you have done here is perform an act of pure alchemy on the page. You have taken a simple, cheap, everyday apple And you have verbally transformed it into a towering mountain of nutritional and financial value.
Yeah.
You have broken the product down to its microscopic atomic benefits and stacked them up one by one. Suddenly, paying $2 for this superfruit seems like an absolute steal compared to buying 10 different bottles of synthetic supplements and a shopping cart full of other groceries.
It feels like a bargain.
You haven't lied about the apple. You have simply expanded the prospect's perception of what they are actually receiving.
You are expanding the perceived bulk of the invisible benefits. It's brilliant. Okay, moving on to another powerful strategy, the text outlines for building value. Discussing the price paid to develop the offer. I found this deeply fascinating because honestly, as a consumer, I usually don't care how hard a company worked to make a product.
Most people don't.
I don't care about their late nights. I just care if the product solves my problem. But the text argues that you can force it to be relevant to the buyer.
You can, and if you are selling a premium product, you absolutely should. It mathematically anchors the asking price in the gritty reality of the massive effort and capital expended to create it.
Right.
The text provides a phenomenal comparison of two different ways to pitch a piece of heavy industrial equipment.
Let's look at the contrast. Version 1 is the straightforward, standard B2B approach. It says, this machine automatically selects the right material, fills the bag, seals it securely, and stacks it on the pallet. It gets it right every single time. It's highly durable and guaranteed good for tens of thousands of repetitions.
Which is totally fine.
It accurately lists the features and the benefits.
It's fine, but it is entirely commoditized. It doesn't build any premium value or justify a high price tag.
Now look at version 2. This version actively details the agonizing, expensive process of creation. It talks about the 3 years of grueling, 24-hour-a-day testing in harsh environments.
For blood, sweat, and tears.
Exactly. It explicitly mentions the hundreds of thousands of dollars in research and development spent just to perfect the prototype. It talks about the engineers obsessing for months over the exact microscopic timing of the gears so that the buyer never, ever have to worry about a midnight breakdown disrupting their supply chain. Both versions describe the exact same machine doing the exact same job, but the second version makes the machine feel like a priceless, flawless artifact of engineering obsession.
Exactly. When you vividly explain the painstaking effort, the massive financial investment, and the years of frustrating trial and error that went into creating the final product, you are actively transferring all of that stored value directly to the buyer.
It's a transfer of value.
You are essentially telling them, we spent 3 years of our lives and $1 million of our own money so that you never have to. You are acquiring $1 million worth of perfected research for a tiny fraction of the cost. It completely shifts the context of the price tag from an expense to a massive discount on R&D.
You aren't just buying a machine. You are buying the ultimate shortcut. You are buying time. And finally, the text discusses the strategy of making the parts worth more than the whole. This technique is known as unbundling, and it brings up the classic, iconic image of the fast-talking pitchman at the county fair.
Ah, yes. The slicer-dicer presentation.
Oh, it's the best.
It is a masterclass in behavioral economics and value construction happening in real time on a foldable table.
We've all seen these guys. They have a crowd gathered around them, and they're demonstrating a multi-purpose kitchen gadget. But notice how they sell it. They don't just hold up the box and say, here's a great blender for $40.
No, they take it apart.
They take the entire machine apart, they hold up the main heavy-duty stainless steel blade and say, this specialized blade alone, if you could even find it in a gourmet store, is worth $20. Then they hold up the specific juicer attachment. If you bought a standalone juicer of this quality, it would easily set you back $15. Then they hold up the grating tool. That's another $15 value. They meticulously break down the functional value of every single tiny attachment, assigning a specific, believable dollar value to each individual piece.
And the psychological effect on the crowd is undeniable. As the pitchman confidently lists the individual prices, the consumer's brain is automatically doing the math.
20 plus 15 plus 15.
Suddenly, we are up to $50 in value sitting on the table.
And then the grand finale. The pitchman smiles and says, but you aren't going to pay $50 today. Because you are here, you get the whole entire set, all of these premium attachments, for just $19.99.
It's magical.
The gap between the perceived value and the asking price becomes overwhelming. The total constructed value completely dwarfs the actual cost.
This is the power of unbundling. You take your core, monolithic offer, and you deconstruct it into its smallest, highly valuable components.
Give us an example of how that works in like a digital or service business.
Sure. If you are selling a B2B consulting package, you don't just vaguely sell 6 weeks of strategic consulting for $10,000.
That sounds expensive.
Right, it just sounds like a big number. You unbundle it, you sell the comprehensive initial deep dive audit, valued at $3,000. You sell the weekly one-on-one strategy calls, valued at $4,000.
Right.
The proprietary custom templates and software access provided, valued at $2,500. And the 90-day follow-up review session, valued at $1,500.
It adds up fast.
By assigning a realistic, justifiable standalone value to each distinct component, the sum total of the parts becomes vastly greater than the package price you are actually asking for.
You are meticulously creating a psychological scenario where the prospect feels like it would be financially irresponsible not to buy it. The discount relative to the accumulated stacked value feels too massive to pass up. They feel like they're taking advantage of you.
And that is the ultimate crucial takeaway for anyone listening to this section. Never, ever just present a naked product next to a naked price tag.
A naked product, I like that.
That is a guaranteed recipe for generating the reaction, I want it, but not that much. Instead, you must become an architect of value. Deconstruct your product into its smallest valuable components. Explicitly explain the agonizing effort, time, and resources it took to create the solution.
Yes.
And highlight the sheer massive bulk of what the customer is receiving, whether that's physical weight, a massive library of digital assets, or a towering mountain of specific micro-benefits like the deconstructed apple.
Yeah.
You must construct the perceived value so monumentally high that the actual price become a trivial, easily dismissible detail in the massive shadow of what they're gaining.
It's really about engineering a completely different perception of reality on the page before they ever reach for their credit card.
It absolutely is. And if we take a step back and look at the entire scope of what we've unpacked today, from that very first desperate attempt to make contact, all the way to the final masterful presentation of the price, a very clear, unified synthesis emerges.
What's the core truth here?
The absolute soul of this material, the core truth you must accept, is that human attention and human desire are not logical, orderly processes.
They aren't logical at all. We want to believe we are rational actors making spreadsheet-based decisions, but we aren't.
We are deeply emotional creatures, and our attention is heavily guarded by a thick, nearly impenetrable shield of daily distractions, ingrained skepticism, and massive cognitive overload. People are willfully blind to your brilliance because they absolutely have to be in order to survive the noise of the modern world.
That's powerful.
But by systematically breaking through that blindness with urgent, unavoidable relevance, by becoming the frantic motorist pointing out the burning bush in their backyard, you force their eyes wide open. You bypass their physical and mental gatekeepers using format and pattern interrupts. You disarm their deep-seated skepticism with psychologically tuned headlines. And you prove your worth with targeted, undeniable evidence.
And then the value stack.
And then, once you finally have their unblinking, focused attention, you construct an undeniable mountain of perceived value using bulk, the transfer of effort, and unbundled components. When you execute all of this effectively, you are no longer just another pest selling a commodity. You are providing a highly coveted rescue. You are offering a bargain that feels too miraculous to ignore.
I absolutely love that framing. You aren't just making a pitch, you are providing a rescue. You have to force their eyes open by illuminating the fire, and then you have to lay out a feast so grand, a mountain of value so high, that they can't possibly walk away. It fundamentally changes how you have to think about every single email, every proposal, every piece of communication you ever create.
It really does.
And with that profound shift in perspective, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to chew on. Think about your own life, your own career trajectory, or your own business right now. If you are operating under the assumption that you can rely purely on the logical merit of your hard work to get noticed, if you are just quietly waiting for the world to organically recognize how great your product is or how smart your ideas are, you are actively choosing to be invisible. You are the guy standing politely at the front door, waiting to be noticed, while the client ignores you and talks on the phone. What other areas of your life are you passively assuming people will just notice your value, when you actually need to set a metaphorical burning shrubbery on their lawn to command the attention and respect you absolutely deserve?
It's a challenging question that demands rigorous self-reflection. But let's look ahead. Once you have successfully set that metaphorical fire, once you have commanded their undivided attention, and once they finally recognize the immense stacked value you offer, How do you push them over the final edge to actually pull out their wallet and commit in that exact moment? Next time, we'll dive into the precise mechanical formulas for applying the kind of psychological sales pressure that transforms "I might buy this eventually" into "I absolutely must have this right now."
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.